I joined.
I joined.
I joined the Legion.
This is Rogers TV.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -9, -8 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa is now under the province's red control status. That happened at midnight last night. Move brings some new restrictions and limitations for you. Here's City News reporter Alex Gouge to explain.
Under the red control status, residents are to only leave the house for essential reasons such as getting groceries, going to work or school, or helping a vulnerable person. The Ontario government is also urging people to limit close contact to those in the same household. Ottawa's Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Vera Etches, explains more of the restrictions.
So interventions in the red zone include limits for all organized public events and social gatherings where physical distancing can be maintained, with 5 people indoors and the same number outdoors as in orange, 25 people.
Businesses such as hair salons, bars, and restaurants are also allowed to remain open with additional restrictions and capacity limits in place. Individual and team sport training is also allowed, but game scrimmages or contact are not. More information on the red control status is up at ottawa.citynews.ca. Alex Gouge, City News.
City News time, 9:01. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A cold wind chill for the last full day of winter, but lots of sunshine today, and the north wind will settle down, the high near 2 degrees. Tonight, clear, -5. It'll feel like -10, and lots of sunshine, milder air for the weekend. For today, the high near 2.
And right now in Ottawa, -9, it's -8 degrees in Smiths Falls. An Ottawa professor says there is no evidence to suggest Indigenous Canadians are any more hesitant than anyone else to get a COVID-19 vaccination. While some maintain colonialism and systemic racism have fostered mistrust in vaccines, Veldon Coburn at the U of O Institute of Indigenous Studies says surveys have actually shown little difference between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people when it comes to getting your annual flu shot, for example. That community can now register. Those over the age of 40 in the Indigenous community can register for their COVID-19 vaccine starting today. Renfrew County and District Health Unit confirming a third student at Madawaska Valley District High has tested positive for COVID-19. All students and staff of the Barry's Bay School who have been deemed to be a close contact have been told to self-isolate and arrange for testing themselves. High-risk contacts can expect a text message on behalf of the health unit or a phone call from a long-distance number from contact tracing staff at Public Health Ontario. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the Procurement Minister Anita Anand, and Interprovincial Affairs Minister Dominic LeBlanc all set to deliver an update on COVID-19 vaccine efforts today. Yesterday, the United States announced it will lend 1.5 million doses of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine to our country. Health Canada confirms the drug has not been associated with any increase in the overall risk of blood clots. Those 1.5 million doses would be paid back to the United States from Canada once our vaccine supply gets rolling. Michael Spavor's trial on charges of spying and illegally sending state secrets abroad lasted just 2 hours in China. That was held behind closed doors. No verdict announced. Deputy Chief of Mission from the Canadian Embassy remains hopeful Spavor and fellow detainee Michael Kovrig could be released through joint efforts with the United States. History made in the East African nation of Tanzania today. 61-year-old Samia Hassan is the first female president. She was sworn in at the government offices. Dressed in a hijab and holding a Quran in her right hand, Hassan took the oath of office, administered there by the Chief Justice. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Good, bad, or complicated.
There's no news in Ottawa and the Valley he won't talk about.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Well, good morning, everyone. We have made it to Friday. I'm Sam Laprade.
filling in for Rob Snow. It is Friday, March the 19th. We have a full show for you today. We're going to speak a little bit later with councillor Tim Tierney. He's talking about patios. You'll want to stay for that chat. We're also going to be, of course, checking in with our Queen's Park panel, so you won't want to miss that as well. We're going to start off with a little fun this morning. We're going to chat about movies. The Oscars, if you can believe it, the nominations happened this week. You might have missed that. We want to make sure that you get all of your entertainment news. So we're going to go with Keith Whittier. Hi, Keith.
Sam, how are you this morning?
Fantastic, because I love speaking with my favorite movie reviewer.
I appreciate that, and I absolutely adore speaking with you as well. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing very well, and when we think about this time of year, there's lots of great award shows that are happening. I've got to be honest with you, Keith, I missed the Oscar nominations this year, and that's why we're tuning in with you today.
Okay, well, fair enough. Well, you know, the Oscar nominations went pretty much according to plan in terms of how a lot of people felt that they were going to go. There were a couple of snubs here and there, but overall, when I look at some of these different categories, I'm really excited about them, especially with the Best Actress category. Anybody in that category could win it, and I would be happy. It's just ridiculously stacked. You've got Viola Davis nominated for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Andra Day, who won the Golden Globe for the United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby, probably the best performance of her career in Pieces of a Woman, Frances McDormand, who's no stranger to the Oscar stage, having already 2 statues for Nomadland, and Carey Mulligan for a Promising Young Woman in what I feel is probably one of the best performances of the year.
Well, it's funny. We wanted to play a little clip for you because I think it's important that we hear a little bit of this. We're a very high-tech show here on City News.
Absolutely.
Did you know that? So our incredible David Smith has pulled some clips for us. We're going to start with Promising Young Woman.
Every week, I go to a club. I act like I'm too drunk to stand. And every week, a nice guy comes over to see if I'm okay.
You okay?
You are so pretty.
I am a nice guy.
Are you?
1, 2, 3, 4. I thought we had a connection.
Okay. How old am I? What are my hobbies? What's my name? Sorry, maybe that one's too hard.
Wow. Keith, I need to see this movie. Tell me about it.
You really do. So, of course, we are in the Me Too, the Time's Up movement, and a lot of the movies that we have seen that have dealt with this subject matter have portrayed women as victims. This movie is very different because it kind of flips the script on that. We are dealing with a woman who was in medical school, who had her entire future ahead of her, and then due to certain events has to change the trajectory of her life. And we are seeing basically her out trying to right some wrongs, if you will, and I'll leave it at that. Carey Mulligan, for me, has always done phenomenal supporting work. She's been nominated for supporting roles in the past, but there's a very strong possibility that she will be adding a Best Actress statue to her collection in a few weeks' time. This was on my top 10 movies of 2020. I saw it at Sundance last year. I absolutely loved it. People are able to see it through different services like Apple TV and Google and what have you. I believe it's still available for rent and for purchase. It hasn't made its way to Netflix or Prime yet, but still tons of ways to see this phenomenal film.
And this is the 93rd Academy Awards, and we know that a lot of women got nods this year.
Yeah, we know that a lot of women. What, sorry?
That got a nod for an award this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they always have, of course, the Best Actress and the Best Supporting Actress. What's really interesting this year, though, is for the first time there are 2 women that are nominated in the Best Director category. A lot of people feel that it should have been 3, but you've got Chloe Zhao nominated for Nomadland, and Emerald Fennell, who was nominated for Promising Young Woman. And the third, of course, would have been Regina King for One Night in Miami. A lot of people felt that she would have been nominated, but it didn't go that way. And I will give you a little spoiler. I'm guaranteeing that there will be a woman winning the Best Director trophy this year. And maybe we'll chat closer to the Oscars. I'll tell you who.
Very exciting. We asked you for your top 3. This is number 2, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Where's the horn player?
I got a Come on, Levy. You rehearse like everybody else.
I'm gonna get me a band and make me some records. I know how to play real music, not this jug band. You call that playing music? I know what I'm doing. Go on and fire me, I don't care. When I got there, they began to say. That's to get the people's attention. That's when you and Slow Drag come in with the rhythm part. Me and Cutler play on the break.
Levy, the sooner you understand it ain't what you say, it's what Ma said to count.
We'll be ready to go in 15 minutes.
We'll be ready to go, and Madam says we're ready to go, and that's the way it go around here.
Love it so much. Keith, tell me about this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is based on a play, and by August Wilson, the same person who did Fences many years ago, and of course Fences starred Viola Davis and Denzel Washington. Now this is about a recording session and tensions rising between the main star, Ma Rainey, as well as one of the musicians, a guy, Levy, played by Chadwick Boseman. Now, what's really interesting about this is Chadwick Boseman, of course, the late, great Chadwick Boseman, has been sweeping the awards leading up to the Oscars, and I fully expect him to win the Best Actor trophy. There are some people who might think, okay, well, this is kind of like a nice gesture because he passed away. Absolutely not. This is because this is by far the best performance in this category. Riz Ahmed is nominated for Sound of Metal. Anthony Hopkins had a phenomenal performance in The Father. Gary Oldman in Mank, and Stephen Yeun in Minari. But make absolutely no mistake, Chadwick Boseman's performance in this is probably the best of his career. It's also interesting that Denzel Washington, who we found out years later secretly funded the education of Chadwick Boseman, is also a producer on this film, so it's kind of like things have come full circle for him. So there are a lot of times when you think to yourself, oh, this is a nice honor because somebody passed. No, even before he passed, there was conversation about him winning this trophy. So it's a phenomenal film, and people can check it out now on Netflix.
I remember a couple of months ago, I asked you for recommendations for my daughter and I, and you suggested Disney and Pixar's Soul.
Huh?
Yeah.
Is this heaven?
No, it's the great before. This is where new souls get their personalities, quirks, and interests before they go to Earth.
Meet 22.
I don't want to go to Earth.
Stop fighting this.
I don't want to. Okay, look, I already know everything about Earth, and I don't want anything to do with it.
You're missing out on the joys of life, like pizza. I can't smell. We can't taste either?
All that stuff is in your body.
No smell, no taste.
Or touch. See?
Okay, I get it.
Love it so much. This is a fantastic film, isn't it, Keith?
It really is, and again, another gem that Disney has brought to us over the last year. It's nominated for Best Animated Feature along with Onward, Over the Moon, a Shaun the Sheep movie, and Wolfwalkers, but everyone's excitement and conversation really revolves around Soul. I can't see how they wouldn't be winning the Oscar for Best Animated Feature Film. Again, as you mentioned, it's on Disney Plus. I definitely recommend people checking it out, and it's along with Chadwick Boseman winning Best Lead Actor, I think it's a guaranteed lock for this year's Oscars.
Very exciting. When are the Oscars taking place?
The Oscars this year are in April, and I believe the one question I wasn't prepared for.
It's all good. It's all
the
good.
end of April. I believe it's the 26th, but don't quote me on that.
Excellent. Well, we certainly look forward to the Oscars. When you think about all the movies you've seen, Keith, we've talked about this over and over again. What movie would you watch over and over again?
But that's in terms of that's been nominated this year, or
just any movie in your whole movie reviewing career.
Wow. Well, I will tell you one movie that I absolutely love. My favorite movie of all time is Heat with Pacino and De Niro. And I think it was back when those actors were probably at the best part of their career. I know that they shared a screen together in last year's film, The Irishman. But if you want to see just phenomenal filmmaking from beginning to end, and it's a movie that I have no problem watching again and again and again, I would say Heat. And I would also add in The Shawshank Redemption to that list. I don't think I've come across anybody who hasn't loved The Shawshank Redemption.
One of my favorites for sure. And our absolutely incredible producer here has let us know the 93rd Academy Awards will be 8 o'clock on Sunday, April the 25th.
I missed it by a day, but yes, the 25th.
I know exactly where you'll be, and I'll definitely tune in too. Keith Whittier, we always come to you for all of our movie news, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you so much for the time. You take care.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Like I said, we have a jam-packed show for you. When we come back, we're going to talk about puppies and kittens. Join us here on City News.
The location is unique. There's, as you can see, it's open, and we have large windows. You can sit down and you can look outside. And this scene is not many scenes like that in Ottawa anymore, with the high buildings. And we have the train station to the west of us. We have the train yards to the south. We have Saint Laurent Shopping Center, not far from here. And OC Transpo, not far from here. And the train, the light train, again, is not far from here. You can find breakfast. The breakfast, it was 7 or 8 years ago, it was one of the best five restaurants in Ottawa. One of the five best breakfasts in Ottawa. 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the Citizen. And our club sandwich is voted by customers the best in town. And the pea soup, too, is voted the best in town. We sell, we make pizza, we make Italian food, Lebanese dishes. Many customers describe it as it has the prices of the 60s, very reasonable prices. And the food, many say the best in town, not me. Many customers say that. It was a shock. It was a shock. And we went from doing well to barely doing very little. We relied heavily on the takeout, and the takeout was not that much. There was some. I hear from many customers that they are willing to come and sit inside. They're not afraid of the spread, as long as we wash our hands, sanitize everything, and wear your mask and keep the distancing. Most or all our customers are okay with that. So they are against the lockdown, They are supporting us a lot. And if it wasn't for the community loyalty, we wouldn't be here today. So I have to thank them for their support so far. It's been great.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Sam Laprade, filling in for Rob Snow. We've got lots of topics for you today. A little bit later, we're going to speak with Charles Burton. He is a senior fellow at the Macdonald Laurier Institute. We're going to talk about the 2 Canadians detained in China. We're staying a little bit close to home now. We're going to speak with Bruce Roney, CEO of the Ottawa Humane Society. Hi, Bruce.
Good morning, Sam.
You've got lots going on, a great lottery, I hear. Tell us about that.
We do. We're really excited about it. Like many charities, we've had to cancel our in-person events, and we certainly don't want the animals to suffer as a result. So we've launched a lottery. It's for the Love of Animals lottery. The grand prize is, it's a really sweet ride. It's an Audi Q3 that Audi West Ottawa and Audi Ottawa have provided for us. So it's really exciting. There's some early bird prizes. We just launched it. It's actually selling really well. We're really excited. But the draw is April 30th. So,
do you think donors are looking for creative ways now that special events are sort of on the back burner?
Yeah, I really do think so. I think people are looking around their community and thinking, there's some suffering, or at least the potential of suffering, and they want to do something about it. And, they've got time in their hands, and they're thinking about their community. And people in Ottawa have just been great, absolutely great.
You rely so much on volunteers. How have your role there changed over the last year?
Oh, hugely. We actually haven't had, we've only had a handful of volunteers on site since the pandemic started, just because of, the restrictions and trying to keep everyone safe. Though we have expanded our foster volunteer program, so there's a lot more people caring for animals in their homes, and that has been an absolute lifesaver, because we cannot fill the shelter. We can't have as many staff on at a time to protect everyone's health. So the volunteers who are helping out by caring for animals in their home have been amazing throughout the pandemic.
Bruce, are you still looking for people to fill that role?
We are. We always are looking for foster volunteers, and the particular challenge in finding foster volunteers is people who are willing to take on animals that have a few more problems than your average, box of kittens that we would see, or a really well-behaved dog. We have animals coming in now with fairly high needs. They're not well socialized. Cats that we want to monitor to see if the fact that they're not using their litter box is just because they're in a shelter. So really specialized kinds of fostering is what we need right now for the animals who need us the most.
When you're talking about socialization of animals, I know that's been one of the big challenges. I have a 1-year-old mini Labradoodle, and I have a 9-week-old mini Labradoodle, and trying to socialize them have been, of course, a challenge. Are you finding that to be a challenge, especially moving forward as we sort of come out of this pandemic? Do you think people will have a hard time with that?
There's been a lot of talk about mass surrenders of animals once people go back to work. I'm not too worried about that, to be frank. And, if it does happen, that's one of the reasons the Ottawa Humane Society is here. But I am really concerned about where people are acquiring their animals right now. There is such a demand for particularly puppies that people they aren't asking the questions that they would normally ask. They aren't saying, I'd like to see where the mother is, and they're doing parking lot deals, and we're hearing of mass importations of puppies from Eastern Europe and Asia, potentially with health issues and genetic problems, and I do worry about what's going to happen down the road when this kind of comes to light, and the problems that people may face with puppies that they don't know where they're from, and may have issues that end up being very costly.
And we're seeing a very heartbreaking story out of British Columbia, 160 small dogs rescued there. That's not uncommon, unfortunately, Bruce.
No, it's not, sadly. But I think it's becoming more common that the demand, the prices for puppies and the demand for puppies now during the pandemic has gone through the roof. And as I said, people aren't taking the precautions, asking the questions, and doing the research maybe as much as they would at other times.
And I think it's really heartbreaking. I have a friend who has a 15-year-old daughter, and she really wanted a puppy, and she got on Kijiji without sort of somebody knowing and sent some money to somebody, and of course, no puppy. What are your thoughts on that, Bruce?
Absolutely. We're hearing about that all the time now, where there's the phantom puppy that doesn't exist. And again, it's fueled by people's, I guess, feelings of isolation and loneliness, and wanting to have a companion animal, and hey, I'm all in favor of that, but people are letting their guard down in many ways, and there is some heartbreak out there for sure.
And the heartbreak continues, and I know we want to talk about this in a positive light. I promise this is the last negative we'll talk about, but we've seen a lot of dogs be stolen, and we're hearing about a really tragic story out of Mont-Tremblant where we believe a mini golden doodle was stolen. She was about 6 months old, and there's a big reward for that, $20,000 reward. We are seeing an increase in thefts, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely. I actually blogged about that last week. It's a concern, and people really, there's so many precautions we have to take right now on so many fronts. But I think another one is making sure that your pet's never alone, never out of your eyesight, and on a lead at all times is really important, because yes, the demand, whenever there's demand for anything, shady people are going to kind of jump in, and I think that's what's happening on a lot of fronts.
And let's talk about the support of the community. Of course, this great lottery you were talking about, you can head to the OHS website and get all the details there. A beautiful picture of that Audi, which I pictured myself in, by the way. But I thought really an important piece of this too is that monthly giving. That must have been really important for you through the pandemic, that those monthly donors would just be committed every single month and you could plan.
Oh, absolutely. That's what's been keeping our head above water, to be honest, throughout the pandemic, so that we can be here for the animals. Our monthly donors are amazing. A number of them have called. They've increased their gift. They're saying, listen, I'm not doing anything. I'm not going anywhere. I don't want the animals to suffer during the pandemic. So, people have really stepped up. And as you say, that consistent month after month money that comes in, which, frankly, I'm a monthly donor. It's easy to give because it's a small amount every month. And it really has sustained us, and it's sustained the animals in Ottawa.
Now, I recall the springtime always comes with challenges as well. I don't know if it's just me, but on the Ottawa Valley pet Facebook page, I've seen a lot in the last few days of pets that have gone missing, and especially cats and dogs at this time. Is that just my imagination, or is springtime bringing out maybe some animals that are trying to get a little bit of spring action?
Well, we're expecting to see a lot more wildlife for sure now. The moment that people are outside and driving more, and springtime birthing season, we do see a lot more wildlife in crisis. We haven't seen our usual spring increase in numbers of admissions yet. It does happen a bit later every year, so we're gearing up for it, but we're not in it yet.
Mm-hmm. I have to be honest, there's very few times I see my producer, David, laugh that hard at the spring action question. So that's always fantastic. He says I can't say that on radio, so that's great. When we think about the Humane Society, of course, we always think about puppies and kittens, but the reality is you take in more different kinds of animals than that, and I certainly remember a time that you and I spoke a lot about guinea pigs.
Yes. We generally have some guinea pigs. We've got the gerbils, the hamsters, the degus. People do forget. Even close friends of mine a couple of years ago adopted a guinea pig, and I said, "Where did you get it?" And it was a pet store, and I said, "Well, why wouldn't you come to the Ottawa Humane Society?" And they said, "You have guinea pigs?" Right. So yeah, it's kind of they're a bit the forgotten pets for us. So.
I remember when I was doing media relations for you a number of years ago. We had the SPCA, of course, brought in about 100 guinea pigs, and during the interview, the mother had birthed 2. So I said, now we're at 102. So that's good memories. Thank you so much, Bruce Roney, CEO of the Ottawa Humane Society. Certainly looking to help out the animals. Thanks for your time today, Bruce.
Thank you, Sam.
When we come back, Tim Tierney is going to be here. We're going to talk about patios. Now, there's a guy I'd love to have a drink with on a patio. We're going to chat with him. Stay with us here on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -8, in Smiths Falls, -7. Feeling colder in the wind, though, and here's what's making news this hour. Ottawa has received its largest shipment of COVID-19 vaccines this week. To date, the health unit's dashboard showing just over 10,500 doses of Pfizer's vaccine was received. In total, almost 100,000 doses have been shipped to the capital since December 14th. Right now, those over 80 can book their appointment, but also starting today, all Indigenous people in the city aged 40 years and older are eligible to book their vaccines. The Prime Minister, along with the Procurement Minister and the Interprovincial Affairs Minister, all set to deliver an update today on COVID-19 vaccine efforts. Yesterday, the U.S. did announce it will lend 1.5 million doses to Canada. The shipment would be repaid later on this summer by Canada as our vaccine supply increases. Michael Spavor's trial on charges of spying and illegally sending state secrets abroad lasted about 2 hours today in China. It was held behind closed doors. No verdict has been announced. Michael Kovrig's trial is scheduled for Monday in China as well. Spring arrives in just a matter of hours now, just before 6 tomorrow morning. Spring weather arrives as well. Temperatures hitting 11 degrees tomorrow, 13 on Sunday, 16 both Monday and Tuesday. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for joining us here on City News. One of the reasons I head to Beacon Hill, Searville, is to see my friend Tim Tierney, City Councillor. How are you?
I'm doing great, Sam. Thanks for joining and having me on the air today. I really appreciate it.
Of course. So you wanted to talk about patio season, and of course, this is a very serious topic. Normally we talk about patio season, and it's it's lots of fun. But the reality is, this is one of the ways that restaurants can actually get through this really challenging time of being in the red zone.
That's very correct. This is ultimately the lifeline. And I tell you, thank goodness for Mother Nature. It looks like we have a balmy weekend starting ahead on Saturday. It looks like, 13 or 14 degrees this weekend. It's going to be fabulous weather. And we didn't want to disadvantage any restaurant that would typically, if they were in the right-of-way permit area downtown, they would have to wait till April 1st. Also, as you remember last year, it's funny, I became transportation chair, and I've already dealt with patios twice. In the last year and a bit. The first time we did it, we told the province, look, we need to amend the rules immediately. We're not going to ticket anyone if they want to throw barrels up with tape in their parking lots and make much larger patios, so be it. Well, we're doing the same thing again. If you had a patio last year, and kudos to Mayor Watson, as soon as we found out about the moving back to red zone, he was on the horn with me, and we had a great discussion, agreed we have to do something for businesses. So if you did it last year, you can do it again this year. Again, we've waived patio fees. We're trying as much as we can within a municipal jurisdiction to be able to help people out.
It was really positive news on a very challenging day. What did you hear from restaurant owners? Were they relieved?
Oh, certainly. I mean, let's face it, there's a few challenges with the red zone rules right now. I mean, and I think we've heard it a lot yesterday, is you could have a giant 20,000 square foot restaurant and you only can allow 10 people on the inside. The tools that we have to be able to help out is say, yeah, if you have a giant parking lot, you can keep putting tables as long as there's a 2 meter separation and all the proper procedures are followed, and take people outside. So they were quite happy about that. And at the same time, I think we have that will help us out, at least in the short term. But I really do feel for the restaurants quite a bit.
Very challenging. Of course, we heard from Mayor Watson yesterday that he was disappointed the province didn't give us more notice. We heard from Dr. Vera Etches, of course, that this was coming. Do you feel like it was too quickly announced? Do you think that we should have given the restaurants the weekend?
Well, and that's what happened. And look, I'm good friends with a lot of restaurant owners. I had a good friend of mine, Sam Sakeley from Al Steakhouse, call me up and say, "Why are we not locking down? Why are we locking down now? I thought it would have been on on Monday. I have all this food. It's I heard it from him. I heard it from some of the niche restaurant / entertainment facilities like Scott Rufo at the Brass Monkey. Now we can't have bands. There's no more singing allowed. I really feel for these people that they were really banking on the weekend. But again, I'm not in a position to argue with the medical officer of health that made the decision ultimately through the province, and it is what it is, and we just have to try our best to get through this one.
We also heard from Mayor Watson yesterday talking about a potential small business tax break. Have you heard the details around that yet?
No, I'm looking forward to hearing more of the details, but certainly it's something I would be supporting. I think the businesses have been pounded on for an entire year, and we have to find a way to keep their doors open. Look, you already see the transformation taking place in the downtown area. I've also seen it in my neck of the woods. It's not restricted just to downtown. I've seen businesses close, and they need something. And I'm not talking big chain restaurants. I'm talking about mom and pop shops that have been struggling. They've missed a lot of their mortgage payment or lease payments or for rental space, and they're looking to stay in the game. They want to stay in the game, but they do need probably a bit of a hand.
And you've had to be so creative at this time to support everybody. One topic that I don't think we can talk about enough is the mental health impact to small business owners and quite frankly, everybody. Is that something that's on your mind as a city councillor as well?
Sam, I'm telling you, a year ago, pre-pandemic, we'd have about 200, 250 emails a day. We're up to over 400, and it's not potholes and light bulbs. It is mental health. It's people that have lost income or their businesses going under. It's very, very challenging, and certainly that is a top priority. That's something that I think after the pandemic, there will still be quite a bit of cleanup and assistance that will have to be provided to a lot of people.
We heard from Caroline Meehan yesterday, a new plan sort of about transit and micro-transit. I know we're trying to sort of think outside of the pandemic, come up with new and interesting innovations. What were your initial thoughts about micro-transit?
Yeah, it was a neat discussion, and it harkens back to the day when they had a dial-a-bus service, and it sounds kind of whimsical and neat, but having some kind of, I would call it a limousine service of sorts. But the challenge that really was explained is, they're still going to go out, they're going to look at it, absolutely, because it was a requirement through the province with the transit dollars. But, if you're comparing a Belleville that has 4 bus routes and 12 buses, it's a very different monster in our city. We have a much bigger fleet. So if there is an opportunity, I'm sure they'll take that on. I really don't know if that's the priority right at this point.
And of course, General Manager John Manconi has been asked to investigate that. Would you be open to a pilot project at some point?
Yeah, a pilot is an interesting word. It depends what's involved with it. I really have to watch and see, we have union contracts in place. We also have to look at, is this going to cost more money? How long would that pilot be to evaluate if it's actually saving us money or if it's costing us money? Because sometimes pilots don't give you the results that you anticipate. So I'm very big into detail. I can't commit to anything without seeing that specific stuff. If it saved us money and it worked, maybe I would say yes to a pilot, but typically 9 times out of 10, and I think Mr. Manconi really highlighted it yesterday when we spoke at Transit a few days ago. A lot of people say, oh yeah, I can do it cheaper, but that doesn't always happen. So the devil's in the details, and I look forward to seeing those details.
No, for sure. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about vaccines. This is definitely the big topic of the day, and I heard, I can't remember who actually was saying it, but that people over 50 can sort of expect their vaccines within the next couple of months. Now, I know somebody over 50, Tim, so that was kind of exciting for me. The rollout, how are you feeling about that? Are you feeling like it's quick enough?
You know what? It all comes down to the supply. I think we all know that. The feds have to get through the provinces and get us more vaccines. I truly think the City of Ottawa is doing a tremendous job. Anthony DeMonte is at the helm. They are ready to go on a moment's notice. If we had a giant shipment dropped at our door, they could run 24/7, no problem. They're adding more facilities. They're coming online. I'm fortunate out in the East End, the John Ruddy YMCA was added on. I see our local community center, the Pat Clark Community Center for targeted groups. So they're just throwing more and more into it. And it sounds like this morning there's going to be some kind of announcement in regards to pharmacies. So, I think we're definitely getting shots in the arm. We're not letting stuff sit in the fridge, but we need more supply. That's certainly the concern.
Speaking about shots in the arm, we're going to go to Premier Doug Ford. He's talking about vaccine booking for everyone over 75. Thank you for your time, Councillor Tierney.
Thank you so much, Sam. Have a great day.
Wanted to ask you, though, about the issue of lockdowns. And I know that you've got a cabinet meeting coming up later today. You've got a lot of different opinions coming your way. Our front page today is Dr. Karim Kurdi of York Region saying that lockdowns are not the answer anymore. But you've also got the science table saying that we should have a stricter lockdown from Oshawa to Niagara, the curfew for Toronto.
We're just hearing questions
Lowe
here
and
for
Peel
Premier
and
Doug
Dr.
Ford.
DeVille in Toronto say modified gray. So you say that you want to listen to the doctors and the science. Which ones? Because you've got multiple competing views. Do you agree with your science table that we should have a stricter lockdown and a curfew in Toronto and shut down the schools for the next 3 weeks?
Well, we'll make that announcement later today. We're going to meet as cabinet, make that decision, Brian. I got to give a shout out to Dr. Kurdi. That guy's incredible doctor. I had a good conversation with him a couple nights ago, and he's doing an incredible job. Talk about a true leader. You see what they're doing in York. They're moving at a rapid speed, so he's doing a great job. I've always, from day one, taken my advice off Dr. Williams, and we look forward to taking his advice, and we'll make a decision at cabinet.
Follow-up?
The issue of looking around at how other jurisdictions have handled things, British Columbia has had restrictions in place since the beginning of COVID, but they haven't had the ongoing rotating lockdowns that we have. The restaurants have remained open with restrictions, same with retail, same with kids' sports, and yet they have lower cases per capita of COVID-19 than Ontario, and their death rate is just a little above half of what Ontario's is at on a per capita basis. Have you asked your team to look at what Dr. Bonnie Henry is doing and what might be working for the greater Vancouver area that isn't working in the greater Toronto area?
Well, we're kind of comparing apples and oranges. Toronto's 3 million people with a surrounding area of GTA of another 3 million compared to a much smaller city of Vancouver. So we have a much denser population here. But Brian, I hear you loud and clear. There's no one out there that wants to open up businesses more than I do. And vast majority of the places are open, to the exception of restaurants and a few other areas. Believe me, it drives me absolutely crazy about closing business. But in saying all that, we have another variant. I'm taking the advice, which I always have, off the Chief Medical Officer, and I'm going to continue to take the advice off the Chief Medical Officer. But I'll pass this over to Minister Elliott there.
Well, each province is doing things differently. We're doing things that Dr. Williams and the team believes and makes recommendations to us that are in the best interests of Ontarians. But what we're really doing is it's almost a race against time for us to be able to get as many needles into people's arms as possible to protect people and keep them safe as the variants of concern continue to Ontario. Unfortunately, they're about 40% of all cases of COVID right now. It's more transmissible, results in more hospitalizations, more people in intensive care, and unfortunately more deaths. So we have to still be very cautious. This is still a very precarious time, but with the great rollout of the vaccines and the fact that the pharmacies are offering them and can offer them now to people over age 60, that's going to really, really help us in the fight against COVID, and then allow us in time to be able to open more things up. But right now, we have to be very, very cautious.
Next question.
We have some really great news. Starting on Monday, everyone over 75 can book their vaccine, with over 50% of Ontario residents aged 80 and over having received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. The Ontario government is expanding appointments through its online booking system to individuals age 75 and over, effective on Monday, March 22nd. So that is this upcoming Monday. As of Monday, the province will also be making an adjustment to the age requirements for the AstraZeneca vaccine to align with the new recommendations by the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. This is really good news. We're getting there, folks. Stay with us here on City News.
To opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, where I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me, I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew it that we have to wait, and we knew it that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what the grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box and do it.
Pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for being with us here. I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. We're getting some great news from the province. Individuals age 75 and over, effective on Monday, can use that online booking system to schedule their appointment. We're also hearing, which is really great news, on March 22nd, which of course is this upcoming Monday as well, individuals age 60 and over will now be able to get a vaccine at an Ontario pharmacy or through their primary care provider. This is fantastic news. So stay with us here on City News. We're bringing all this breaking news to you. You'll definitely want to stay with us. I wanted to speak with someone today about this heartbreaking story of two Canadians in China that are jailed in China and have been for 2 years. We wanted to speak with Charles Burton. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Sam.
Charles is the senior fellow at the Macdonald Laurier Institute. Charles, let's start with how this all began. Take us back to when these two gentlemen were detained.
Well, it happened about a week after the Huawei CFO, Meng Wanzhou, was detained at the Vancouver airport pending a U.S. extradition request that she be sent to the United States to face serious charges of bank fraud. So it appears that Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Faber are guilty of absolutely nothing whatsoever except being Canadians in the wrong place and the wrong time. And the Chinese government thought, I think, that if they detained Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Faber, that this would get the attention of the senior levels of the Canadian government, and our Prime Minister would simply direct the BC Superior Court to release Ms. Meng back to Beijing, assuming that the Chinese don't believe that Canada has genuine judicial independence and that we would give in to this kind of coercive diplomacy, buggery kind of activity. So 830 days later, Kovrig and Faber are existing in Chinese prison hell. They live under crowded conditions with no privacy. The toilet's in the corner of the cell. It's a hole in the floor. 24-hour lights, relentless interrogation for having done nothing. And so now we've had a trial of Mr. Faber. It took 2 hours. Was secret. There were no media or public allowed to observe, and no one from the Canadian Embassy was permitted access to Mr. Faber, which is a gross violation of consular law. So, and we're expecting the same repeat with Mr. Kovrig on Monday. So that's basically where it stands. It's an appalling situation, as you say.
Charles, when I think back to when we first heard about this, my initial thoughts were there's lots of Canadians that would have been in China at the time. Why these two gentlemen?
I think it's completely random. I mean, the idea that Kovrig was running Faber as a spy doesn't make any sense, as Mr. Faber doesn't actually know Chinese. He's his area of specialty is Korea, and he was arrested in China while transiting from North Korea down to South Korea. He'd sent me a message on WeChat, to inviting all his friends to meet him at a bar in South Korea the next day. Well, seeing as I'm here in St. Catharines, that wasn't happening, but a nice gesture on his part. Of course, he never arrived. And
I didn't realize.
Former diplomat, so I mean, maybe there's some basis for suspicion of him, but in fact, he is not a spy.
Charles, I didn't realize you had a personal relationship with him.
Well, I know both of the men, but which I guess does add to making it more real. And I also, as someone who frequently traveled to China until 2018, I could imagine that I could easily be in their position in prison, and I often wonder how I would hold up under such appalling conditions.
And how are they holding up? I understand they've had some contact with their family.
The Chinese have only allowed one consular visit in the year 2021, and they did not allow the deputy head of mission, Jim Nicol, who went up to Dandong for Mr. Faber's proceeding, to meet with him. It's a cause for concern. I mean, obviously, up to the point of the trial, the Chinese probably doubled up on the relentless interrogation, and they're living in crowded and not very hygienic conditions at the time of a pandemic. So, of course, one's worried if the Chinese government does not allow us our legitimate access to our citizens, that maybe the reason for that is because they're not in the best of condition. But we have no indication one way or another. The families do receive letters, sometimes with months between them, which are censored, and from those and from the few times that Ambassador Burton has been able to engage with them since the pandemic, only by video conference, they're saying that they're still okay, and I pray that's the case.
There's some interesting developments. Some people are calling it a coincidence. Do you think it's a coincidence that there was some high-level talks with the Chinese government?
No, I mean the announcement of the trials of Coveric's favor after 820 some days occurred exactly coincident with the first high-level meeting between officials of the Biden government, Antony Blinken, the Secretary of State, and Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, with their Chinese counterparts, Wang Yi and Yang Jiechi in Alaska, in Anchorage. And clearly, the Hmong matter and the matter of China's hostage diplomacy will be on the agenda for that meeting. So I think that this trial is definitely connected to that. Mm-hmm. But, we do have the example of Kevin Garrett, who was picked up by the Chinese under similar circumstances, also in Dandong. He was incarcerated in the same prison cell where we believe Mr. Spaver is currently being held. He was held for over 2 years on spurious spying charges to pressure our government not to extradite a real Chinese spy, Su Bin, who had purloined a lot of aerospace data from Boeing. After 2 years, he had the same sort of trial. It lasted a few hours. Then there was a delay of 5 months, and the sentence was handed down of 8 years. And then 2 days later, they put Kevin Garrett on a plane back to Canada. So, maybe history will repeat itself. That would be, some cause for optimism, but we just don't have enough information about this to really assess what's really going on.
And we know after the trial, which, as you said, only lasted a couple of hours yesterday for Michael Spaver, that there wasn't a verdict. Do you have any sense of what that sentence will be, and if the sentencing will be used in a diplomatic way?
Well, by normal Chinese law, one would expect maybe 10 years, something like that. But, this is not a normal situation. They could be subject to life imprisonment. It could be, it could even be the death penalty for serious crimes of espionage, although that really seems to be stretching it. But I think essentially they're going to be held until the Chinese government finds it politically convenient to release them. So, this whole trial process and sentencing and so on, it's a bit of a charade. What it's really about is the Chinese government feeling that holding Coveric's favor no longer serves their interests and is no longer keeping the Canadian government at check in our, in popular opinion, wanting our government to take a much stronger line against China, including the genocide in Xinjiang, Coveric's favor, the spurious violations of agricultural commodity contracts leading to billions of dollars of losses to Canadian farmers and so on. China is just not following the normal rules of the international community in terms of fair and reciprocal and just interaction. And I think Canadians want the government to express our discontent with that in some objective way, and so far we haven't been doing that. And I think the Chinese may feel it's because they're holding Coveric's favor, which gives them an incentive to keep holding them longer.
Thank you so much to Charles Burton, Senior Fellow at Macdonald Laurier Institute. My thoughts are with you as you think about your friends in China.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. When we come back, we're going to have a conversation about cystic fibrosis, and we've got lots on the docket for you today. We're also going to be speaking to our panel at Queen's Park. Stay with us here on City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -8 degrees. It's -7 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The province is ahead of schedule as it rolls out COVID vaccines by age. The province says vaccination appointments will now be open starting on Monday for those 75 and older. Over 50% of people over 80 in our province have received their initial shot, and more pharmacies are going to begin delivering shots of COVID vaccine. The province has expanded that program by another 350 right across Ontario being allowed to deliver the vaccine. The province expects to bring the number to 1,500 pharmacies by the end of April. That would mean pharmacies would be able to deliver 40% of vaccinations by the end of next month. Again, that news just from the province this morning. Anyone over the age of 75 will be able to book their COVID-19 vaccine starting on Monday. We have the new case count for the province just coming in today. It is again up 1,745 new cases today. Of that number, 73 of these cases are in Ottawa. 16 are in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 11 in the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, and there is one additional case today in Renfrew. Ottawa has received its largest shipment of COVID-19 vaccines just this week. The Health Unit dashboard showing just over 10,500 doses of Pfizer received. In total, almost 100,000 have been shipped to the capital since December 14th. Of those, almost 83,000 have been administered to residents. City News Time, 10:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A cold wind chill for the last full day of winter, but lots of sunshine today, and the north wind will settle down the high near 2 degrees. Tonight, clear -5, it'll feel like -10, and lots of sunshine, milder air for the weekend. For today, the high near 2.
And right now it's -8 degrees. In Ottawa, it's -7 degrees in Smiths Falls. Ride programs were held in 3 locations across the city, and they stopped over 200 vehicles on the evening of St. Patrick's Day, Wednesday night. Ottawa police say every single driver stopped was not impaired. Officers would like to thank those for making St. Patrick's Day safe on our roads. City News Time, 10:03. American President Joe Biden is visiting Atlanta. This is just days after a white gunman killed 8 people, most of them Asian American women, in 3 massage businesses.
President Biden travels to Atlanta today, a trip that was originally scheduled as a chance for him to promote the $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan he signed into law last week. But the White House shifted the schedule after the shootings in Atlanta this week. Now the president and Vice President Harris will meet with Asian American state legislators and community leaders to discuss their concerns about the increase in violence against Asian Americans. President Biden and Vice President Harris will also tour the CDC. Karen Travers, ABC News, Washington.
And an Ottawa musician is facilitating multiple Zoom drum sessions for seniors living in long-term care or retirement homes. This is a way to boost their spirits and also work to get more instruments for the events. William Lauren was doing in-person drum circles for retirement homes and then eventually carried that over to Zoom once the pandemic hit. He tells City News he was inspired to do something after being told about how seniors had to live with a lack of social or physical activity during the pandemic.
Kind of gave me the push to create something to keep these residents motivated and energized and active.
Now, a GoFundMe is currently underway to get drums into as many of these homes as possible. Just go to ottawa.citynews.ca for the full story. I'm Andrew Boyle, and for news anytime, follow up online at our site, ottawa.citynews.ca.
It's time to talk back
on The Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
I'm Sam Laprade filling in for Rob Snow. A little bit later in the show, we're going to speak with Chris Day. We're going to talk about the Conservative Party convention and how Erin O'Toole is doing. We're also going to speak with Melissa Lafreniere. She's going to talk to us about mediation for families that are separating at this time. First, we wanted to speak about cystic fibrosis. We know in this country that a lot of people are being challenged. They're not able to get the health care that they need. We want to speak with Jacob Jaramillo, Director of CF Get Loud. Hi, Jacob.
Hi, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Jacob, let's start with what is cystic fibrosis? We know we've heard that. There's been lots of great fundraising around CF. Walk us through what this disease is.
So cystic fibrosis is a progressive multi-organ disease. So it primarily affects the respiratory and digestive systems, but any part of the body that has mucous membranes or kind of like a salt chloride channel, it's affected. So it could go respiratory, digestive, like I said, but also reproductive and other organs as well.
You've made a desperate plea, a call to the Premier for his intervention into this, because there are therapies that are available, and unfortunately they're not being, patients aren't being able to find these treatments at this time.
That's right. So there are 4,400 Canadians living with CF, and as recent as 9 years ago, we've had a pretty big breakthrough in medicine. So it's precision medicine is gene therapy. Now, back 9 years ago, there was the first molecule that I guess was successful at really addressing the underlying cause for CF. So, you don't have to deal with the ravaging effects that, from being a baby, of declining in your health and just getting progressively closer to a double lung transplant, which is really the only kind of last resort that we have currently. Now, these gene modulators came onto the market 9 years ago, and most recently in 2019, there was, a fourth generation now gene modulator called Trikafta that has the potential to treat 90% of our patient population. So that's really where, although it had been present previously, and we've had very, very uphill battles in even getting them here in Canada, our most recent plea, I guess, is just to get Trikafta through to the 90% of the Canadian patients that could benefit from it.
And what is the treatment?
So the treatment is pretty much 3 pills, to be honest. It's actually a miracle. And sometimes, I think of this unspoken social contract that I feel that our community has had with government, and I'm sure many other rare disease communities do as well. So, for 60 years, we've been raising funds, been raising awareness. Luckily, believe it or not, CF is quite well known around Canada for good reason. And now we're at the end of the line. Now we're just before the finish line, and we're asking our government to do their part. We've done our part as families. We've done millions of studies. We finally got the molecule discovered here at Sick Kids in 1989. And now we're at the end of the line, and we're just looking to Doug Ford to say, will you be our champion?
Is this emotional for you, Jacob?
It is. So I live with CF. I'm 33 years of age now. My lung function is below 50%. So, it's just a gradual decline that many CF families across Ontario and Canada are used to. And it's a sad thing, but we kind of just, we do what we can with what we got. And now we have hope. And I think this, personally, for me, I moved from Colombia when I was 12 for my family to give me the best opportunity that I would have to thrive as a CF patient. And at the time, believe it or not, Canada was the leader in CF, ability to thrive as a CF patient. Now we're sitting on the sidelines pretty much watching patients in the UK and the US get their lives back, get hope, start exercising, just having the opportunity for a future. And as Canadians, sometimes we wonder, are we really, really in tune with what our health system is? And I think the pandemic has perhaps, shed some light on that. But as a CF community, all we're saying is the quote-unquote cure is there. And I don't think we would ever, just stand on the sidelines when we've come so far.
Is this a cost issue, Jacob?
So cost is obviously a consideration, and we have to be clear about that. Now, at times, I really just step back from cost because I try to use the heli skiing analogy. So you have an extreme skier that gets lost in the woods. Now, government, public, nobody's going to bat an eye and say, let's not deploy all the resources that we have as a country to go save that life. And to me, it's really not about cost. It's about lives. So the heli skier chose to be in the woods. We didn't choose to lose the genetic lottery, if you will. we're here. Yes, we have a genetic condition that requires, costly therapies. But I mean, is that not what we kind of expect from our country and our government?
We have a number of MPPs that listen to this show that are working directly with, of course, the Premier. We've got Jeremy Roberts, we've got Lisa McLeod. They're all good friends of us here at City News. They may be listening. What message would you want them to take back to the Premier?
I think to directly really appeal to the Premier, and Katie Brady, a CF patient, she did a really good job with a mini documentary that we've been trying to really get on the Premier's hands. And maybe to those MPPs, as a very clear and direct ask, is just reference the video. It says our story. It says our ask. Get him to really engage with us. Now, as a bigger picture for perhaps MPPs that are listening, we really need you to raise the question period. We need you to make it an issue. I think we've had some people in our corner, most specifically Jim Wilson, doing an amazing job at Queen's Park, raising the issue over and over again. But this shouldn't be a partisan issue. We need our health critic to really come to our aid. But mostly, I think we're just looking to Premier Ford because he doesn't like red tape. He claims to want to build an iron ring around the vulnerable populations, and this is kind of language that has been used over and over because of COVID. So we're really just looking for him to be our champion, and hopefully MPPs can, do their job to get him to do that.
I love the name, CF Get Loud. So, when I think about somebody with CF, I know somebody that's had CF. It's a struggle every single day. I love the fact you've used Get Loud. This is over for you, like you said, in a way. You're at the end of the line. You want to get loud. You're not going to be quiet about it anymore.
That's right. And I mean, you know what? It's for me. It's been transformative to really feel. The emotion in the community. And I think a lot of people fight this battle often alone. Personally, I didn't come out of the CF closet until just over 2 years ago. And by that, I mean that until my best friend had CF, I would just, step away at the restaurant table, go cough blood in the bathroom, and come right back upstairs as if nothing happened. And for people to really feel that they're empowered to get loud and really just join the ranks, because we're not just individual families. There's 44 Canadians living with CF. And as we all do, that we have at least 20 people in our corner every single day. Sometimes people have more. So, there's a lot of people that are affected by this. And we're not even including people that have lost loved ones a little too early. So we're all hoping to get loud, rally together, and make our voices heard.
Jacob, you referenced a video that's been seen over 11,000 times on social media. Where can our listeners here at City News watch that video so maybe they're inspired to also support you and reach out to the Premier in your behalf?
Absolutely. So we have pushed it on all our social media channels. So you can go to YouTube and search CF Get Loud. There's the videos right there. We're most active on Facebook as well. We have a Facebook group called CF Get Loud Community, and our Instagram and Twitter handles are at CF Get Loud. So you'll be able to find it in any one of those mediums.
Jacob Jaramillo, I really appreciate your time today. Thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you, Sam.
We have some exciting news coming out of the province today. We wish Jacob well, of course, on his desire to have some of those treatments funded as well. But we are hearing some news about vaccines, with over 50% of Ontario residents aged 80 and over having received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. The Ontario government will be expanding the appointments through its online booking system to individuals 75 and over, effective on Monday. As well, on Monday, individuals aged 60 and over will now be eligible to get a vaccine at an Ontario pharmacy or through their primary care provider. This is really, really good news. Stay with us here on City News.
The Ottawa
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned. We have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And for us, we have to be careful, especially with the virus going on. Did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was thought it's gonna be like this. Earthquake might happen. We joke about it before. Things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive? That's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in a mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, and this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when come to clothing, it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. Mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
The opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
There are so many different angles to the pandemic. Of course, the healthcare system, the small businesses. There's another issue that I don't think we talk about enough, and that is what this is doing to families. We wanted to speak with Melissa Lafreniere from True North Mediation. Melissa is a child and family therapist and parenting mediator that specializes in parenting mediation and child-centered separation services. Hi, Melissa. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really my pleasure. I saw a post you had yesterday on social media, and I really wanted to bring you on the show today to talk about what this time has been like for families. I think it's been very, very challenging. We're seeing lots of unfortunate domestic abuse. We're seeing lots of separations and divorces. How do you help, Melissa?
So my role in a separation is to really work with the parents on putting their children at the forefront of their conversation and separation. So I work with families who are thinking about separating, who are in the process of separating, and are concerned about how to do that in a way that protects their children from emotional harm today and maybe down the road as they navigate co-parenting.
Is this different because it's a pandemic? Do you think that's added an extra layer?
I definitely think the pandemic has not helped in terms of how families are relating to each other. I think having everyone trying to navigate and work from home has put a tremendous strain on parents and children in general. And I think that that's really what's caused the tipping point. I think in the past, we all would have had our time away from each other and we would have come home, and anything that might have been upsetting to you or difficult would have been confined to maybe 3 or 4 hours in your day. But now with everybody together, these things are really being highlighted is what I've come to notice in my work.
And like you've said, everyone being at home, there's not that outlet, or maybe, you don't get to chat with your friends about your, maybe challenges that are going on in your marriage, which would really make you feel even more isolated. isolated. So turning to someone like yourself, is that a way for families to sort of avoid a lot of lawyers, if you will?
Oh, absolutely. I think lawyers are absolutely important in the whole process, but sometimes they don't need to be your very first step. In talking with somebody about how to set up your separation and what is important to you and kind of plan for it in a really mindful way can sometimes take the financial burden off the back end when you are trying to meet with lawyers to get some legal advice to finalize things. So I think in speaking with a mediator, it always can be extremely helpful to your decision-making process because it lets you make agreements that may be outside of the law, so to speak.
And I think people that haven't been through the process, I'll be honest with you, I've been divorced twice. I'm 50 years old and I'm quite grumpy, to be honest. But the perspective that I have is going through that process twice. Each time was, of course, very different. The first time was really an opportunity when I was leaving my husband is to work through that separation agreement. And I was, to my shock, it ended up being about 40 pages long. I think people that aren't involved in this type of thing don't realize how detailed you get. I mean, we had in there about Halloween costumes and holidays and who does this and who does that. Do you work through those things with people?
I do. So I don't mediate finances. I work with a financial mediator on those things, but definitely your parenting arrangements. So setting up your schedules, deciding how you're going to spend holidays, kind of really getting into the weeds a little bit, because I feel like if you have a really self-executing parenting plan, that's going to cut down on your conflict later. So we talk about all the things that you probably wouldn't even think about, so that they've been considered and agreed to, and the conversation's been had. So when they do pop up down the road, we're not wondering what to do next.
Well, and I think too, something to add there, because certainly as my daughter gets older, she's 13 now, she has a say. She wants to say, oh no, I want to do this or I want to do that. So I think overlaying what the children want eventually is something we really need to think about. 100%. One of the services I offer is child inclusive mediation, where I will actually meet with the children and get their thoughts and ideas and bring that information back to inform a parent's decision-making process. And I also do voice of the child reports for the court system. So sometimes courts want to hear from kids. And I think it's a really lovely way for the children to be heard and for the parents to consider what their thoughts and feelings are when making decisions about them. My experience has been the kids live your separation. The kids live your separation. So while you may go off and do your own thing, they're the ones that are going to be really traveling back and forth and reestablishing relationships with both parents. I think it's important that their thoughts are considered. Is this difficult work, Melissa?
I really enjoy it. I've been a child and family therapist for about over 20 years now, and I've seen the impact of a poorly executed separation on children. And having been a product of divorce myself with parents who really did not do it well, I recognize how important it is to help people protect their children in the long run. A lot of the times I meet with children and I find out that the problem, quote unquote problem, really isn't them. It's more that their parents can't get along or that there's a lot of fighting and conflict that's impacting them. So I feel like if you can address those issues with the parents, you're making things much, much better for your children.
And we know one of the big reasons that separations happen is communications and also finances. Those two things are very, very challenging. What are you hearing from parents? Are people also saying that this pandemic has sort of pushed them to the edge?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. That's what I'm hearing the most, is that people who might have been pre-contemplative before around, ending their relationship are way more confident now because things have kind of imploded at home and they've come to reprioritize what's important to them. And I'm noticing that a lot of people are looking more for peace and calm and happiness, and sometimes that can't be found in the relationship that you're in.
When you're having conversations with children, what's their feeling? What are their biggest questions?
The biggest thing that I hear from kids is that they just really would wish their parents could get along, or that there wouldn't be so much conflict, or that they could just generally like each other enough to come to events and not have it be weird or awkward. So I definitely hear a lot of sadness and grief around the breakdown of the family, but those are the things that really stand out for me as why I do this work, to help kids not feel the impact of their parents' decisions so much.
And on the flip side, when parents come to you, what are their biggest concerns?
They want to make sure that their kids are okay. They really want to know that their decisions isn't going to, quote unquote, ruin their children's lives. It's not a decision that people go into lightly. I've been divorced. It was something that took a long time to get to because of the kids. And I think people try really, really hard to stay together for them. Mm-hmm. And that may not always be the best thing. So that is a conversation I have frequently around the impact of separation and divorce on children and how to mitigate those things.
When I have these important conversations, I love to provide listeners here at City News with resources. Mm-hmm. Where can you point us, Melissa, if we're looking for information, maybe someone's thinking about separating or they just have, where would you send them?
So they could definitely reach out to me if they like, and I can be found on my website at truenorthmediation.ca. But locally, there are tons of great community resources and therapists that are available to help you walk through your separation as well, and to speak with your kids. A great resource is the Youth Services Bureau of Ottawa that they can provide in the moment support through their crisis lines. The Collaborative Practice of Ottawa is a great place to find lawyers who want to help you resolve the financial and parenting matters in a collaborative way. They're not going to escalate the situation. And by going a collaborative route or mediation, you tend to reduce your chances of ending up in a litigation. So I think those might be excellent first steps if you're thinking about separating and want to do it in a really child-friendly way.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting. I remember seeing a speaker talk about this type of thing, and she said, I speak to people that are 45 years old and their parents divorced like 30 years ago, mm-hmm. and their dream is still that their parents would get back together again. And I don't say that in a light way. I say that in a, it's something that does carry us through our lifetime. So I know that your services are much needed. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, well, I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Melissa Lafreniere from True North Mediation. We appreciate that tough conversation, but it's certainly one we want to have here on City News. When we come back, we want to speak with Chris Day. He's going to talk to us about the Conservative Party convention and Aaron O'Toole. Can Aaron bring the party together? We're going to ask Chris that important question. Stay with us here on City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -7 degrees. In Smiths Falls, -6. And here's what's making news at this hour. The province says its vaccine rollout by age is moving faster than expected. So beginning Monday, the province will open up the vaccine appointments to those 75 years of age and older. The province also says more pharmacies are delivering vaccines. Another 350 will be allowed to do that within the next couple of weeks. The province feels by the end of April, the number of pharmacies delivering vaccines for COVID will reach 1,500. Latest numbers of new cases in the province. It is another increase today. 1,745 new cases. Of that number, 73 are in Ottawa, 16 are in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 11 in Eastern Ontario. There is one new case in Renfrew. Toronto has seen its case count rise again to 478 today. There are also 10 new deaths across Ontario. Ottawa's sewage monitoring program is being expanded to include the province. The system was created by CHEO and University of Ottawa, shows COVID-19 rates through samples of local wastewater taken. The provincial government investing more than $12 million now and in partnering with 13 research institutions. They will test wastewater samples taken in other communities. City News Time, 10:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Thanks for being with us here on this Friday. I'm Sam Laprade. A little bit later in the show, we're going to speak with Dr. Jeff Turnbull. If you've never heard Dr. Turnbull, you definitely need to stay with us. He is a director at Ottawa Inner City Health. He's going to talk about the increase of overdoses, especially during this past year. Really, really important conversation with him. Today's a big day for Erin O'Toole, the Conservative Party convention. It's day 2 for them, so we wanted to speak with Chris Day. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Sam. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Chris, of course, is the president of Winston Wilmont Consulting. It is a big day for Mr. O'Toole. What are your thoughts, Chris? Do you think he's going to bring the party together, or is it going to get more divisive?
I think he's got one job today when he speaks at around 5:15 this afternoon, and that is to set the tone and get people focused on a likely election this year, and get them singing from the same songbook, too. I was speaking to a source of mine close to Mr. O'Toole this morning, and they said to me that he will be presenting some concrete ideas to begin laying the groundwork for the next election platform, and acknowledge that the Conservative Party needs to grow its movement. So I think that's a big focus for him. You have seen in recent months, in his first months as leader, him staking out some positions that have been different from his predecessors, and also directly reaching out to groups that maybe haven't heard from Conservative leaders in the past few years. And I think that is a very, very deliberate strategy to go out and actively build a new voter coalition. And I think he will be making the case to people that his approach is the right one to grow the accessible pool of voters whenever an election is held.
How distant does he have to become from Andrew Scheer and from Stephen Harper? Does he really need to stand into his own spotlight now?
Well, I think he certainly needed to signal a change of leadership when he assumed it, because, I think there were a lot of people that had grown disaffected by perceived shortcomings in Mr. Scheer. So he obviously was elected because of those perceived shortcomings. I think he needs to do what Stephen Harper did very well, in a sense, which is to identify what that voter coalition needs to be and go out and speak to it to the broader conservative movement. There's a base of conservative voters across the country. Every party has its base. The question is, and the trick is, to grow beyond the base and get that extra couple of percentage of voters to lend you their votes, which is something that the True Liberals have done for the last few years, and that the Conservatives need to do if they have any hope of forming the next government.
Let's talk about Peter Mckay. He's not involved, which many people are sort of raising some eyebrows about. Should Aaron O'Toole have brought him closer? We love to think about that sort of analogy about bring your enemies closer, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, there's two sides of that coin, right? The closer your enemies are, the closer they can stick you in the back with a knife. The other, I think quite importantly, other leadership candidates who weren't successful are attending. And in fact, one of them, Leslie Lewis, is given a prominent role, a speaking role, and campaign, a convention co-chair position. So, I think, people make their own choices. And, you've certainly seen some supporters of another candidate who's no longer a Conservative MP even, sort of try and align and make some noise and trouble for the new leader. And I think, frankly, those are very minority positions in the party. I think most people, the vast majority of party members, are focused on getting election ready and getting behind Mr. O'Toole as he prepares to lead the party into the next vote, whenever that is.
Is there a relief about Derek Sloan that he's maybe, I know you haven't said the name, but is there a relief that he's not as close to this party?
I think for a lot of members, there is. I think Mr. Sloan did himself no favors, did the party no favors in his leadership bid. I think he speaks for a very, very small group of people who have a vision of what certain positions ought to be. And frankly, I think those are out of step with Canadians and Conservatives writ large. So, he speaks for some folks, or thinks he speaks for some folks that he may or may not speak for. But he will make his choices, and I think the party has made its.
You have such an interesting career, Chris. I mean, I could talk to you all day long. You've really done a lot of incredible things in your career, of course, at CTV for many years, and of course, working for John Baird for many years. So you've sort of have an inside scoop of what this convention looks like. Now, of course, virtual this year is a very different, but when you were on the floor of those conventions, what was that like?
Well, I mean, there's an energy at any political convention, right, that is really, really fun and infectious. It's really quite a celebratory gathering. It's a chance for people to see people from across the country that they maybe only see every couple of years. And so that's going to be very different this year. It's a really interesting point that you're raising, right? This is the first ever virtual convention of this size, right? And, there's a record number of delegates participating. So there's a really interesting point about, there being a virtual divide, so to speak. But it is a much more democratizing way of doing a convention in a sense, in that, not everybody has the money to pay for convention dues and hop on a plane and fly across the country and stay in a hotel and pay for food, etc. So, I think it's allowing more people to participate than ever could before. So that's a good thing, right? But, who wants to spend the first weekend of spring on a Zoom call?
Right.
So
right.
That's the flip side of it.
Absolutely.
So I think you're going to see that play out over the weekend, and it'll be unlike anything we've seen before.
When I look at the list of speakers, of course, Aaron O'Toole is there, lots of different MPs. I really notice that there's, of course, a lot of women here. Women and the women's vote, female vote in this country will be essential for Aaron O'Toole. Let's be absolutely clear about it. Aaron O'Toole doesn't get elected if he doesn't have the women's vote.
For sure. And, that's part of any voter coalition. And I think one thing that Conservatives need to really be thinking about this weekend and more broadly as they head forward is what kinds of policies, positions, and vote-getting promises are they able to put forward to attract not only women, but men and women and the people who they are supporting at this very critical time, right? I mean, women have been so disproportionately affected by the pandemic's effects over the last year. I think Conservative voters have been very, a lot of small business people, a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people who work in the service and manufacturing sectors. They have been very, very affected by the effects of this pandemic. And I don't think that they are seeing the recovery coming fast enough. So I think there's an opportunity to speak to people on that level. I think there's a huge opportunity to address some of the vulnerabilities that the pandemic has exposed. So pandemic management, the vaccine rollout, and I mean, we're still 65th in the world today.
E-charity is another big one.
I mean, the whole ethics piece. But I think really economy, jobs, the whole notion of the gig economy and the gig workers. How do you support people? How do you move forward with the vulnerabilities socially and economically that the pandemic has exposed, and do so in a way that is coherent, affordable, responsible. And if we can get that right, that will appeal to broad sectors of the population, not just specific demographic groups.
What's the balance that Aaron O'Toole has to create today, talking about himself and talking about Justin Trudeau? There's a really fine balance there, right? Because as a leader, you talk about Justin Trudeau too much, you're being told you don't have anything to say, right? You talk about yourself too much, and it becomes, it's all about you, and it's not, we've got a bigger fight on our hands. What's that really important balance for him?
Well, and that's really interesting, Sam, because he has been, sort of starting to introduce himself to Canadians over the past months. And you've seen some ads online and on TV, et cetera, trying to get people to learn more about Aaron. And I think he's got a great story to tell in terms of who he is, his past, and what he's bringing to the job. And yes, I mean, that's the finest balance that he's got to strike today in terms of that setting the tone of presenting himself to Canadians, but saying that he's in it for them. It's not about him, it's about them. And then, while finding those contrast points with Justin Trudeau on the vulnerability aspects, and I think pandemic management, ethics, some of the other things that we've talked about, those are all areas that I think he'll need to strike out different ground on, and I think most importantly, he's going to start to propose things, not simply just be an opposer of the government. So
really important for sure. What is the dream date for Aaron O'Toole? When would he like this election, do you think, Chris? Is he looking for that May-June timeframe, or is he hoping it goes into the fall?
I think he's been pretty clear that spring election should not be on the table. He's not pushing for that. Now, that being said, the polls haven't really moved since September. So, there's not really a compelling argument for either the Liberals or the Conservatives to go now. That could change, of course, over the coming months, but I don't think he is pushing for a spring election. I think you're more likely to see a fall election, and that would be, a 2-year since the last one, which is pretty standard for Canadian minority governments. But all will depend with the confidence votes that are coming up in Parliament this spring, and what the contents of an eventual budget are. And, the opposition parties can trigger an election, but the government can also engineer its own downfall. And that's something to be watching very carefully for.
We only have about a minute. I love talking about fundraising. What's it like to be fundraising right now for a political party? It must be tough, Chris.
Well, I mean, they've done quite well throughout this. All of them have managed to reach their voter blocks despite the pandemic, which is kind of interesting for sure, because one wouldn't necessarily assume there's a ton of extra money out there, but they've done, if you look at the end of year financials, they all did pretty well. I think it's a question of the tone that you take with your fundraising and the issues that you're fundraising off of, and really trying to stake out that ground of being in it for Canadians. And I think the Conservatives have traditionally done pretty well at that. And in fact, they've been very, very good at going after specific voter groups based on and targeted with specific messages. I think you're going to see that continue. But also a broad general appeal from all parties.
Mm-hmm. Really a great conversation today. Thank you so much. I know where I will be at 5:15 today. I want to hear that speech from Aaron O'Toole. I know you'll be there as well. Chris Day from Winston Wilmont, thanks so much for your time. Stay with us here on Rogers TV and City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, is got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries, started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, so I have some very exciting news for you. If you were born in 1942, 1943, 1944, 1945, or 1946, Monday is going to be a very big day for you. People that are 75 or over are allowed to make those appointments through that online booking system for your vaccine. So certainly mark your calendar for Monday, March the 22nd. This week has been very, very tragic. Out of Atlanta, we have seen some absolute devastating news of Asian American workers killed. It's just tragic. It's actually really heartbreaking to know that there is anti-Asian hate in this country. And we wanted to speak about this today because I think the more we talk about these topics, the more we learn and hopefully change comes. We wanted to speak with Amy Go, president of the Chinese Canadian National Council for Social Justice. Hi, Amy.
Hi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And before we go any farther, I want to ask you, how are you, Amy?
It's been emotionally very distressing to learn, and in fact, on a daily basis, we've been hearing about anti-Asian attacks, particularly and Asian women being the target. And of course, this tragic incident made us feel extremely vulnerable, but at the same time, I have to say that make us more resolved and more determined that we need to do something, and we will have to work together in solidarity.
These murders are absolutely tragic out of Atlanta. If listeners haven't heard, it's very, very tragic. And we know as well there was an incident, I believe it was yesterday, a 76-year-old woman was attacked, and she fought back. And she found a piece of wood, and she actually defended herself. And the perpetrator, a Caucasian male, ended up being the one taken away in an ambulance, which I think is really interesting. And I just sent her so much love, because I think that's very brave of her. This is tragic that we even have to have this conversation, Amy. Was this conversation being had pre-pandemic, or has the coronavirus and the fact that the coronavirus originated in China the reason that we are seeing an escalation?
So we have to say that historically Chinese Canadians have been facing racism and, in fact, racist attacks and microaggression, right? Historically, there is legislations that bar us from coming, they ban us from entering businesses, professions, since we landed in 1800s, right? And but this kind of systemic racism has just, made it just rear its head, So we have this under the cover systemic racism, and then, of course, the economic impact that Chinese Canadians have suffered and all that, and as well as the microaggression that we've been facing is always there before the pandemic. But SARS, remember 2003 SARS, right? That, Chinese Canadian immediately were blamed. Immediately we were blamed. Businesses were shunned. People were told not to go to work. Tenants were told not to go into their homes. Those happened in SARS. And we knew this pandemic was going to be a repeat of SARS, but we underestimated the scale and the impact and the breadth and the extent. This was far worse than we have anticipated. While we knew racism is always there, but we did not know that it would be so vile and so vicious. The pandemic really, really sort of like unleashed, you can unleash this racist attitudes and turn them into violent attacks against Asian and against Chinese Canadians.
Is this happening in every corner of this country? We know we're hearing a lot of tragic stories out of British Columbia. We've heard a couple about Ontario. Is this across this country, or is there pockets that is worse?
It's across the country. In the report that we have released together with our partner organizations, where we collected data from people who reported incidents, and even in September, we knew that these happened across in every single province where there was Asian, where there was Chinese. And of course, if you look at the numbers, of course, they will be higher in cities like Vancouver and Toronto. However, though, even one case, wherever it may be, to me, it's just one too many.
Of course, this is a heartbreaking conversation, as I said, to have. But how do you have this conversation, or how do people from the Chinese community have this conversation with their children?
That's such a good question. In fact, our organization did a focus group with children in Vancouver and Toronto and their parents, and asked about, do you talk about racism, right? How do you talk about racism? The reality is that they don't. While children actually, especially the older ones, knew that something was wrong, but they dismissed them. They were just jokes. That's like a self-preservation mechanism, isn't it? Right?
It is. Yeah.
And then parents themselves have experienced racism in the workplace, in public spaces. And because they think, well, I need to protect my children from having this kind of painful discussion. So the reality is they don't. However, because of pandemic, because of the reality that we knew children were being bullied. We knew that children were being name-called and even probably being physically, assaulted. The parents recognize that we need to have that discussion. We need to have a facilitated discussion to give children the safety and the space, to share. And of course, allow the children to also have an outlet for that, probably anger and emotions that unfortunately have been there but not being revealed and not being discussed.
Does this just come down to pure ignorance, Amy? Is this what this is? Is there something else here?
I think it's a combination. Of course, systemic racism has always been putting, of course, some people, particularly white people, in a position of power, right? I mean, the system is such that people have more privilege and more power than the others, right? So it has definitely benefited more people, and we should recognize that. And we need to call it out and name it. At the same time, I think there are many allies that regardless of whether they are white or racialized and all that, there are many allies out there too who wanted to do something and probably just don't know how to do that. They know that this is wrong. They want to be part of the solution rather than the problem. And I think that's where I think we should focus. And the thing is that whether we need to, I think the issue is not to reveal or try to expose the intent, but look at the outcome and look at the ways that we can have structure and systems in place where people can participate, that Chinese Canadian, Asian Canadians would not need to feel that we're foreigners, that we not need to be to make feel that we are always the target.
Such an important conversation. We only have about 30 seconds. Amy, can you share with us what you would say to somebody if they're thinking that any part of this in terms of the coronavirus has come from the Chinese community and that they would ever, have meant this to happen? I mean, this is just a tragic case. Mm-hmm. This isn't on the backs of Chinese people.
Yeah, yes. So I think it is very important that we follow science, right? Mm-hmm. And we know that coronavirus has happened, but it's not because of a race, of whether Chinese or others. Mm-hmm. The virus is here. And so please don't connect that virus with any particular race or culture or ethnicity. We need to all deal with the virus. At the same time, we all need to deal with racism.
Absolutely. Amy Go, thank you so much for your time today. We're thinking about all of you.
Thank you so much.
President of the Chinese Canadian National Council for Social Justice, had a very important conversation to have. Stay with us here on Rogers TV and City News.
WW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March 19th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -7, in Smiths Falls, -6. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A couple of major changes to the vaccination program across Ontario. Starting on Monday. With the details, here's City News reporter Alex Bloomfield.
It's a major ramp up to the province's vaccine rollout. First off, the Ford government is expanding appointments at mass vaccination sites through its online portal.
Starting this Monday, March the 22nd, we will accept appointments for residents 75 years of age and older.
So a new age bracket in general right across the province. And now when it comes to the pharmacy pilot, which has been in Kingston and Windsor and Toronto over the past week or so, 300 pharmacies, that is getting a major shot in the arm, as retired General Rick Hillier calls it. He's leading Ontario's vaccine task force, and he says that program is set to ramp up significantly over the coming weeks.
In the next several weeks, we want to more than double that to 700, and in the couple of weeks after that, we want to double that again to more than 1,500.
Hillier estimates we could see 100,000 doses a day going out total across the province sometime next week. That number was 61,000 in the most recent reporting period. And now also with the AstraZeneca doses, those are due to run out at some point before we get a next delivery of them in April. So Moderna will also be given out through pharmacies. That is the next step in this pharmacy pilot. So about 700 plus in the coming couple of weeks, and up to 1,500 by the end of April in terms of these pharmacies. And that would be right across the province, not just in the pilot zones. The province estimates 40% of all of its vaccinations will be given out through pharmacies by the end of next month. I'm Alex Bloomfield.
City News Time, 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
A cold wind chill for the last full day of winter, but lots of sunshine today, and the north wind will settle down, the high near 2 degrees. Tonight, clear, -5. It'll feel like -10, and lots of sunshine, milder air for the weekend. For today, the high near 2.
I'm still waiting for that milder air to move in. It's -7 in Ottawa, -6. In Smiths Falls. Now, the case count of COVID-19 continues to move up in Ontario. Today's number, 1,745 new cases. Of that, 73 are in Ottawa, 16 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, 11 in Eastern Ontario. There's one new case of COVID in Renfrew. Toronto has seen its case count continue to rise. There are an additional 478 cases in the provincial capital today. Also 10 new deaths reported across Ontario. Now, Canada's top doctor is warning the country, don't ease up on public health measures, calling this a critical moment as we see cases and variants rise. Here's City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney.
There are now around 4,500 variant cases of COVID in Canada, a rise of nearly 1,000 since Monday. Regular cases also rising quickly, especially in younger Canadians. And Chief Public Health Officer Dr. Theresa Tam says now is not the time to ease up on public health measures.
Team variant has the ability to take off fast. This is a crucial moment. If we don't slow down the spread of the variants, team vaccine is at risk of falling behind.
Dr. Tam also trying to reassure Canadians that the AstraZeneca vaccine is safe for use in our country and the shot is not associated with an increased risk in blood clots, as was determined by the European regulator. She says it's possible there may be a link to a very rare blood clot, but Health Canada is monitoring and investigating the situation. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
City News Time, 11:04. Blue Jays gearing up for the start of the regular season on April 1st, and City News will bring you the preseason game on Sunday afternoon. The Jays playing the Yankees, a 1:07 first pitch. Get set for the season with preseason action Sunday afternoon on City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Sam Laprade, filling in for Rob Snow. Do you have airline credit? I'm sure you do. If you do and you're looking for a refund, you'll definitely want to stay with us. We're going to be speaking with the founder of Air Passenger Rights and Advocacy Group. You'll definitely want to hear that chat today. One of my favorite people is Dr. Jeff Turnbull. How are you, Doctor?
I'm well, thanks, Sam. How are you?
I'm good. Dr. Jeff Turnbull is the director of Ottawa Inner City Health, and I always recall fondly when I worked at the Ottawa Mission, you would come and visit, and you were such a joy to work with, and you worked with every one of those people who found themselves homeless. You took time with each and every one of them. I'll never forget it. Is this really what you've been meant to do, Doctor?
Yes, this is what I was meant to do. I love it, too. The people are wonderful. The issues are very compelling. It's probably been the most rewarding thing I've done in my professional career.
Well, watching you do it is a joy, I will tell you that. One thing I wanted to talk to you about, I want to talk to you about lots of things today, but one thing that I really want to talk about, which is absolutely heartbreaking and I think hasn't got a lot of attention during this pandemic, is the fact there's been an incredible increase of overdoses. Talk to me about that, Doctor.
So we've seen this happen, Sam, since the onset of the COVID pandemic. So we've seen a 60% increase in overdose rates. And recall, if you will, that, we felt that overdoses before the pandemic, that was a major catastrophe, a crisis, and now it's just gotten that much worse. But I have to say also that over the last 3 weeks, those numbers have just skyrocketed, and we've seen, just amongst our clientele, we've seen 5 overdose deaths, and we have no very good explanation for that other than the fact that the drug supply has become increasingly more toxic.
Dr. Turnbull, how many people do you think we've lost since the pandemic?
Well, we know that in 2020, the year, if you look at coroner's reports of accidental deaths from overdoses, in Ontario, it's about 250. In Ottawa, it's about 80. So that's one every few days of a death. And that's much more than we would expect in other types of illnesses at this age group. These are people in their 30s and 40s. We're, in this more recent episodes, we've been seeing younger people dying of overdoses. So it's very, very distressing for all of us, and particularly the families and the clients in general.
And when we think about the number 80, one thing I know about you is you know some of the faces behind that number.
Absolutely. I know these people, and we've all known that we're all very attached to them. We've been caring for them for a very long period of time. And so, it's a tragedy for everybody. It's a tragedy for us, and it's very hard on the staff to work so hard about trying to prevent COVID and keep people well in that context, and then have this epidemic of overdoses happening at the same time. People we've known and cared for years.
Is this people using more, or is this what they're using?
I don't think they're using more. We have known that, the advent of fentanyl and its metabolites have been very, very dangerous. But what we've seen more recently is the drug supply has become that much more toxic. It's contaminated with different medications, different things like sleeping medications, etc. And that's made it so much more dangerous just to use any drugs whatsoever.
It's really heartbreaking. I know how hard you work. Is it taking a toll on you, Dr. Turnbull?
I think it takes a toll on all of us. I'm awake at night, like everybody in our team, wondering what we could have done better or how we could prevent the next episode or, in fact, who will be next. So that's always, challenging for each and every one of us. But the fact that we're saving lives and helping some people, and today we're actually immunizing in the shelters to prevent deaths from COVID. So that's a positive thing. So we work as a team and we try and support each other, and we look towards the positive, but we have to work just that much harder to keep everybody safe.
I know you've stepped out of that vaccine clinic to spend a few minutes with us today. What's the vibe there, if you will, in terms of this vaccine rollout? Are people relieved?
People are willing. people are, we're immunizing both staff and clients, recognizing that there are outbreaks in most of our shelters now, and the only way we can control outbreaks is to immunize the staff and the clients. So that's what we're doing. I think we're probably around 80% of staff, and we're about 50% of the homeless community. But we're working hard to push that number up to 80, 90%.
This has been very challenging, as we've said, on so many people, Dr. Turnbull. The homeless population and people that find themselves homeless, you and I have spoke many times. Each and every one of them has their own story. What's been the story? What's been the chapter for the last year for them? Is it been far more challenging during this time? There was a part in time where they couldn't even find a washroom in downtown Ottawa.
Yeah, Sam, they hear every day public health saying, you have to protect yourself by social distancing or physical distancing. You have to hand hygiene. You can't be in, crowded circumstances, etc. And you have to have testing and isolation where appropriate. Mm-hmm. Those are beyond their reach. And so, they have to line up for meals. They have to live in cramped quarters, and especially during the winter months. And opportunities for hand hygiene are scarce. So they find themselves very vulnerable, and they feel the risk that they're experiencing, and they feel like, in a way, that they're worried that people will just forget them and neglect them because of their vulnerability. And so they're worried, and they're quite excited to get the vaccine.
Mm-hmm. We're speaking with Dr. Jeff Turnbull, the director of Ottawa Inner City Health. Is this the time in our history where we finally just say enough is enough? We have to do more for homelessness. We have to do more for affordable housing. Is this the time?
I would like to think it is. I would like to think that at the end of our pandemic that we reflect back and say, what just happened, and why were there so many communities so vulnerable, and they suffered so much as a result of COVID. Remember that I don't think this will be the last infectious pandemic that we experience. And so I think we have to prepare for others, and the way to do that is deal with homelessness. Affordable, subsidized, supportive housing for everybody. It's the solution. Everybody knows that, and that's the direction we have to go.
Like I said earlier, every single one of the people that you've come in contact with over a number of years of working with people who find themselves homeless, each and every one of them has a story. Do those stories stick with you, Dr. Turnbull? Do you often think about that maybe as you drive home at night, about how, by the grace of God, there go I? I mean, is it like that for you?
It is. It is totally. I'm so thankful that I can be in a position where I can help them, and yet at the same time I'm thankful that those people closest to me are not in this circumstance. Everyone does have a story, and I have to be honest, I think of those stories of people who have passed away, and I think about that on a regular basis. And but on the other hand, we have to turn our attention to the people who are with us, and how do we prevent them from being just another story.
Take me to a conversation with one of them, of course, not using any names, but what are those conversations like? How do they view you?
It depends on the day, sometimes, I have to tell you. I think they're appreciative of just anybody spending time sitting with them, not judging them, and being there for them. And they're very, very thankful. They're considerate, they're thankful. They obviously have challenges with mental health issues, plus their addictions, etc. But despite that, they're very appreciative. And I love walking through the shelters and hearing, hey, Dr. T, or, come on over here, let me show you this. And being part of their life. I love being part of their community. And so it makes it that much more rewarding, but it makes it that much more challenging when you see the difficulties that they're experiencing.
for sure. Well, Dr. T, it's certainly been a pleasure chatting with you today.
Well, my pleasure.
Thank you so much. Dr. Jeff Turnbull, Director of Ottawa Inner City Health, having that really important conversation, of course, about overdoses. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course.
Bye, Sam.
Thank you. When we come back, if you have airline credit, you're going to want to hear this next conversation. I myself have a lot of airline credit, and it's frustrating to me that I will not be getting a refund. Well, maybe I will. Stay with us here on City News.
Part of the reason I got back into this is because I am creative, and I also wanted to kind of have a fun flair, 50s vibe. All of the boxes are kind of fun names, the colors are fun, the logo is fun, and it's not just the package that I want to bring joy to people's lives, it's also the feeling that they get when they receive it, to know that there's someone that thinks of them and they're missing them and showing that they care when they can't be there. The smallest of the subscription boxes is the red box, the classical box. So you would get 5 to 7 items from the variety of categories. Those do change quarterly. However, with items that are more popular, we'll bring them back as people ask for them, or you could get them as an add-on option. And then those items will be included in the Jazzy box, the same items from the first, although they'll be in a larger size, more quantity, as well as a couple extra items. And then in the largest box, the Doo-Wop Deluxe, which is our most popular, that is a comprehensive offering of all of the other 2 boxes, plus additional. So for example, if you were to get a certain item in the smallest of the boxes, that item would still be offered in the large, but in a bigger size. So you're getting everything bigger, plus an extra few items. The first thing is I look for Canadian suppliers and manufacturers. That is something I'm very proud of. I make sure that the products are safe, that they fit into the packages that we offer, obviously. They have to be the proper size and weight. I have approximately 300 items that we have so far that we can order that basically help make people's lives easier. There's snacks, there's self-care items, there's entertainment, a little bit of everything. And basically I try it and test it, and if it's duly approved, then I include it in our packages. So some of the categories that we have is we offer treats, which is of course everyone likes treats, no matter how old you are. So we have things like nuts, chocolates, different types of snacks, maybe a handmade piece of jewelry. We also include pieces of jewelry as well, occasionally. We also have our pamper items. So your pamper items would include things like your bath soaks, your specialty lotions, things like that. 2 other categories we offer are leisure. Leisure would include things such as puzzles, adult coloring books, paint by numbers, crosswords, word find, Sudoku, if that's how you say it. And we also have items for self-care and health. So masks, sanitizers, sanitizing wipes, they're all natural, non-drying, made with natural ingredients. So they're very good for everyone, especially in this time that we're dealing with.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Many of us were hoping to travel in 2020. We might have booked those airfares. We were already thinking about where we were going. I was heading off to New Zealand and Australia. I'm so sad that I didn't get a chance to go there, but I had booked all those flights, and in many cases, Canadians are finding themselves in a fight with Air Canada and WestJet and a number of other airlines to get those refunds. So we wanted to speak with Gabor Lukacs today about this very topic, the founder of Air Passenger Rights. How are you, Gabor?
Good morning, I'm well.
Always
a snowy day here. We have a snowstorm here in Halifax.
Oh, you're in Halifax. Wow. Snow there. It's actually the blinds are closed. I don't even know what it's like here in Ottawa. It's so great to chat with you. I love our conversations because you just cut to the chase. Let's talk about what it means for Canadians. I have $19,000 in airline credit. I was supposed to do a number of trips last year. That money has not been returned to me. Should it have been?
Yes, it definitely should have been. The first question to check is, did your flight actually operate? You may have chosen not to fly even if your flight did operate. That's a whole separate matter. But if your flight itself did not operate, then you have to be given a full refund to the original form of payment of any money you paid for your tickets.
So when you
If
phone
the
Air
airline doesn't
Canada...
comply,
Sorry, go ahead.
then you need to do what we call a statutory chargeback. Both in Ontario and in Quebec, you have statutes, that Consumer Protection Act, that requires the supplier to refund money if the services were not provided. If they don't comply, then you can direct your financial institution, the credit card issuer, the whatever bank or company that issued your credit card, to reverse the charges in full, including any interest, to ensure that you get back the money that you paid for services that have not been rendered.
Is that if we had a
financial
ticket?
Institution doesn't comply, then the next step is to claw back your money and simply spend down an amount equal to the amount in dispute and say, you have already been paid. I've already paid this amount. If you have paid a bill before, you have to reverse the charges, and I don't owe you anything as of today.
So let's say, for instance, the flight did not go because of COVID-19 and our ticket was non-refundable. Is it still refundable?
You have stated two things that are completely irrelevant. The first thing which is irrelevant is why it didn't go. The second thing is whether a ticket was sold as non-refundable. Non-refundable ticket simply means that if you decide to not travel because, for example, you have a change of plans, then the airline can keep your money. But there is no such ticket in the world that would allow a supplier to pocket your money and not provide you with services. Mm-hmm. So the law is crystal clear. If they failed to operate a flight, if they didn't operate a flight for any reason, snowstorm, pandemic, war, it doesn't matter what the reason is. They don't have to pay you extra compensation for loss of enjoyment, but they have to give you back your money. That's a no-brainer.
And is this for, let's say, for instance, I'm using my example, but I've booked flights with Air New Zealand. Does it matter that it's not a Canadian airline?
It doesn't matter as long as you bought it in Canada. You're certainly subject to the Ontario, if you live in Ontario, or if you live in Quebec, the Quebec Consumer Protection Act, and those laws will apply to you. If foreign companies come to do business in Canada, they have to obey by Canadian law. Mm-hmm. I would hasten to add that it is more the Canadian airlines that have trouble complying with Canadian law. Foreign airlines, especially European airlines, have been far better in providing refunds.
When I think about the flights I was to take, for instance, one of them was in June. Is it too late for me now, Gabor?
No, it's not too late. One of the problems is that financial institutions don't understand the law properly. The frontline people are used to dealing with their internal chargeback dispute procedure. That's an internal chargeback according to their own internal rules. What I'm suggesting people to explore, and we have a wealth of information on our airpassengerrights.ca website, is statutory chargeback. It's a chargeback based on the province's laws. And there, the timelines are that in Ontario, once you give a notice to the airline that you are canceling the contract because they failed to deliver and they don't refund you within 15 days, then you have, from the end of those 15 days, a 60-day period to request reversal of the charges from your card issuer. So it doesn't matter when you start that first step. What triggers the timelines in Ontario is your consumer notice, your notice to the airline saying, I'm canceling my contract with you because you failed to deliver the services I paid for. Mm-hmm. Then the clock starts.
It's so interesting because, many of us have received emails. I know I've received an email from Air Canada recently saying, oh, by the way, here's the credit that's going to be on your account. Well, there was no conversation between myself and Air Canada that I wanted that credit. Are they doing that to try and avoid people calling them looking for refunds?
The airlines in Canada are engaging in essentially a fraud. They are embezzlement, theft. You can categorize it differently, but they are holding on without any color of right to passengers' money for services they never rendered. That's a form of theft. On top of that, they may be engaging also in fraud by misinforming passengers about their rights, misrepresenting information that is available, for example, on the Canadian Transportation Agency's website, which itself is misleading, but misrepresenting it as if it was some kind of legally binding decision, and deceiving consumers to believe that they don't have a right to get back their money, which is absurd. If you order anything from a grocery store and they don't have it and you paid in advance, they have to refund you. It's not their fault that they don't have, say, avocados on a particular day, but if you ordered avocados, they have to give you back what you paid for avocados. They cannot say, well, we'll have avocado in 2 years from now, then we'll deliver it to you. The same principle holds for airlines, and they have to abide by the law.
Is it wrong that I'm now craving guacamole? Is that wrong, Gabor? With all the talk about avocados. I think this is a really important topic. I don't think Canadians know their rights. Would you agree?
I very much agree. This is exactly why we have a Facebook group on air passenger rights, why we have the airpassengerrights.ca website, where we have information on statutory chargeback with step-by-step guides, with templates of what to send in each step, what timelines to follow. Unfortunately, the only exception where we are seeing some provincial information that is step-by-step is in British Columbia. British Columbia Consumer Protection does have some information on statutory chargeback, even that's not sufficiently prominent on their website. But in most Canadian provinces, it's just doesn't seem to be a prominent issue for their consumer protection agencies, even though it is on the law books.
We often think about, things like Air Canada and WestJet in terms of transportation as a federal issue, but it really is a provincial because of the statutory. Is that what you're saying?
Airlines are federally regulated. You're correct about that. But in 2014, the Supreme Court of Canada issued 3 landmark decisions to the effect that federally regulated businesses are still generally subject to provincial statutes of general applicability. So a province cannot make statutes specifically about airlines. That would violate the federal jurisdiction. But if every business in the province has to follow a particular procedure, for example, have to provide refunds for services not rendered, then that obligation that applies to all businesses will also be applicable to airlines. Airlines are not immune to provincial consumer protection laws of general application.
I always learn so much when I speak with you. Thank you so much, Gabor Lukacs, founder of Air Passenger Rights. Can people reach out to you, Gabor?
Definitely, through our Facebook group. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. When we come back, you'll want to buckle in. We have our Queen's Park review, and there's lots to talk about. Stay with us here on City News.
Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, March the 19th. So good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, we've got some sunshine, but -6. Here's what's making news this hour. Ontarians aged 75 and older can start scheduling COVID-19 vaccination appointments through the province's booking portal on Monday. Adults 75 and older were set to become eligible by the first week of April, but Premier Doug Ford says the province's immunization effort is ahead of schedule. Officials say more than 50% of Ontario residents aged 80 and older have now received at least one vaccine dose. A pilot program offering vaccines in some pharmacies is also expanding and will offer the Oxford AstraZeneca shot to anyone aged 60 and older. Provincial health officials report 73 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa today. This is out of 1,745 new cases across Ontario. The province is also reporting 10 new deaths due to the virus. According to Public Health Ontario, Ottawa has 204 suspected cases of COVID variant. They will be confirmed by further testing. Now, yesterday that number was 188. Elsewhere locally, Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit reporting 8 new cases, 6 of those in the past 24 hours. There are 11 new cases of COVID-19 in Eastern Ontario, and Renfrew County is reporting 1 new case. Canada's top doctor says there's concern that an increase in more transmissible variants of the COVID-19 virus may be threatening the country's progress in containing spread of infection. Dr. Theresa Tam says there have been nearly 4,500 variant cases of COVID-19 in Canada. 90% of those are related to the variant first detected in the United Kingdom. With Easter 2 weeks away, celebrations will have to again be modified this year. As Dr. Tam says, the holiday is not the time to be having big gatherings. Dr. Tam says the more transmissible variants are threatening the country's progress before vaccines can bring full benefits. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Welcome back to the Rob Snow Show. I'm Sam Laprade filling in today, and I hope our next time together is going to be as exciting as the whole day has been so far, because we're welcoming to the show Gilles Bisson, John Fraser, and David Piccini. Hello to all of you.
Very good. Hello. Great to be on.
It's so great to connect. Of course, Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, David Piccini, PC MPP for Northumberland, Peterborough South. Big news out of the Premier today. Very exciting news for Ontarians. Were you relieved to hear this news, David Piccini?
Yes, what are you referring to?
I'm sorry, I'm just so excited. I assume everyone's thinking vaccines. So the vaccine rollout today, and that's my fault on that one. I've just been chatting about vaccines all morning. But the vaccine rollout that...
Lowering to 75.
Exactly. Yeah. Very, very exciting.
No, this is great. Sorry, so much happening. We had a local infrastructure announcement too, but no, this is good news. I mean, widely across the province, with over 50% of residents aged 80 and over having received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Expanding appointments is critical. Our online booking system to ages 75 and over, and Monday, March 22nd, this is ahead of schedule. It's really a proof point, and we see examples. I had the Premier in my riding on Monday to tour a mass vaccination site. The throughput to do 1,000 a day. We just need those vaccines. If we can get them, we'll get them in the arms. And it's been an incredible community effort, seeing Rotarians. We had over 350 volunteers step up in 2 days. This is what, Team Ontario is about. This is what community volunteerism, people putting aside our differences for the collective good of the province, of this country. And it really is a time where we're seeing from all walks of life, Ontarians band together. And I'm just proud that we're ahead of schedule, and the thanks goes to Ontarians.
And John Fraser, we know that the Prime Minister obviously was having a lot of challenges getting those vaccines here. Now that they're here, they're being rolled out by the province. What are the next priorities, do you think, for Premier Ford?
Well, I think we got vaccines coming in, and it's encouraging to hear that over 75-year-olds will be able to apply online next week. That's good news. I think we have to, a couple of things. Number one is we only about a third of the vaccines we've had so far have gone to people 65 plus, which is like the group that's most affected by hospitalizations and deaths. So I think we have to do a better job of getting it to those folks, 65 and over. And I'm encouraged that there's more vaccines coming in. So I'm hopeful. We're lagging a bit behind on that, but I think we can probably catch up. And the other piece is, and I think we'll be talking about this later, is that there are some areas of the province that are hotspots. And Mississauga Peel has some particular challenges. You saw the things that happened with Amazon. They have a lot of places where people work, large number of people work in close contact. It's driving community spread. So fires are really burning hot in some places. And I think, I know that the head of the task force said, we're saving 10% of the vaccine for priorities. And I know that, the city council in Mississauga and a large public medical officer of health are saying, we got a real fire burning here. So, we're going to need your help. Just like here in Ottawa, we went to the neighborhoods where people were at greatest risk. So it's the same kind of thing. So I think that's the thing that's got to be on the minds of the people looking at what we need to do next.
Gilles Bisson, if we were to be speaking a year from now, how do you think the rollout will be remembered in terms of Premier Ford and the job that he's done here in Ontario?
I think it'll be remembered as a sluggish start. I think there was a lot of confusion at the beginning of this, and the government has a bit of a challenge that they created themselves because they tried to reinvent the vaccination system when one already existed. So we are now back to utilizing our public health unit and the existing system that was in place that we normally use for flu shots and various type of vaccines that we do on a regular basis. So the first thing here I think we need to say is a big thank you to those people working in the public health care system. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of people who've done a lot of work to get us to where we got to go. This is a culminative, an effort of everybody coming together to be able, our public health units and various people that work within, to be able to get there. So that would be one thing. And I guess the one thing I would hope that people would remember, a year from now is that, there's a reason why we have a public health care system in Canada. And the reason is that, nobody in this province or this country should have to worry about having to use their credit card to get some kind of health service, be it vaccine or whatever it might be, when it comes to being able to make sure that their health is taken care of and that they're safe. So I think if we get something out of this at the end, I would hope that people would recognize that a public health care system is where we got to go. Because remember, Mr. Ford and the Conservatives, when they first came to power, were trying to diminish the role of public health units and do a bunch of amalgamation and reduction of budgets. And I think they've learned the importance of public health and why that was a bad idea.
What do you say about that, Mr. Piccini?
Yeah, thanks for allowing me. First and foremost, I think, again, I'd echo something all three of us on this panel agree on, which is to thank the workers on the front lines, even more than just public health. The volunteers I mentioned, Rotarians, for example, family doctors who on top of their day-to-day are giving up their time, nurses, so many others in our community who are stepping up, municipalities with the MOUs in place for arenas, community centers. But I would just say, without question, I think, we are the only jurisdiction with so many PHUs. I think that, if you ask any frontline healthcare professional in my riding about how we can best integrate local delivery, everybody's open for that conversation. And that's why our government launched Ontario Health Teams. And, if I think locally in rural Ontario, we know the realities are very different than downtown Ottawa or downtown Toronto. We've had Ontario Health Teams were instrumental in our vaccine rollout. We've seen community paramedicine across the province of Ontario, supporting community-based healthcare, thanks to Doug Ford and our government's investments. We've seen increased funding for our hospitals, again, thanks to this Ford government, as well as rural health hubs like Colborne, for example, in my riding. We just launched a rural health hub, getting better patient-centered care where people, and I know you'll see pushback from others who don't want change, and I would just encourage Gilles and others to embrace better patient-centered care at a localized level. And that's what this government's investing in, and it's paying dividends. And I've just cited many examples, but we see it across this province.
Just let me go first, John, just very quickly. Number one, every government in the history of Ontario has invested in the healthcare system. I don't care if it was NDP, Liberal, or Conservative. Even Mike Harris invested in the healthcare system. So to all of a sudden say things are only happening now because of Mr. Ford, I think flies in the face of the history of what's happening in Ontario. The second point I'd like to make is, yes, you guys have put in place the Ontario Health Teams, which is sort of getting rid of the LHIN, something you guys talked about before the elections, but you stayed away from the issue of public health. Public health units are a completely different structure, and your government wanted to reduce them and reduce their budgets at the beginning, and I think that they finally learned that public health units play a vital role in our healthcare system, and hopefully you're not going to continue down that path.
Mr. Fraser.
Yeah, so I just...
Sorry, I'm going to take Mr. Fraser now.
David. So I think there's one thing that, we're talking about public health units and the vaccinations, and I'm not going to get into debate about who did what when, but the other next challenge that we have is, the bookings for the over 80s are slowing down in a lot of communities, and they're not filling the spots, as you see in Toronto. And so how are we going to get to those people who are hard to get? Maybe we got to 50 or 60% or whatever the number is, but now we're getting to the no longer low-hanging fruit, the people who can't get out of the house, who don't have access. So we got to do that as well too in all of our communities. In all of our communities, not just in one specifically, because that's another challenge that's there, and I didn't mention it when we were talking about that earlier, because right now this is kind of an all-hands-on-deck effort.
Let me ask you this, Jill.
Can I just respond to that quickly?
Yep, quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I would agree with John that we always have to look at ways to get into every nook and cranny in this province, and over 80 is absolutely a priority. We've administered more second doses for those in LTC, the most vulnerable, than any other province. But what I would say is I understand why John says we don't want to talk about when, because over a decade we didn't see those investments. We saw medium-sized hospital funding formulas languish under that government. We didn't see investments in new... Just let me finish, John. I'll let you speak. We didn't see investments into long-term care homes. We've seen in my region now alone the move to more modernized private and semi-private rooms, which we know curbs the spread of global pandemics. So we've got to take lessons learned.
We have lots to talk about. I want to move to the third wave and the red zone. Let me ask you this, Jill Bissot, what color is Timmins in right now?
We're actually somewhat open at this point because the severity of the cases in Timmins are not as bad as in other places. So we're doing a little bit better than other places. We're not as in the situation of Ottawa. But the one point that I would make, that we need to be very careful as we move into Easter, and we're going to be moving into spring breaks and all that kind of stuff. People cannot get lax because all of a sudden the vaccines are available. You can still transmit the disease once vaccinated. So we need to be clear that we need to keep social distancing. We need to keep on wearing masks. We got to do all of that stuff until we get to a point that we have a sufficient number of the population who has been vaccinated. And that's one of the things that really concerns me, because the question becomes, where do we go from here? I think further restrictions is problematic. I understand the difficulty with, people not being able to get into stores to buy what it is that they need to do, and small businesses need to survive. But if we're going to open those stores, we need people to participate, and they participate by wearing masks and not being anti-maskers, and doing social distancing, not having parties where everybody gets together and decides it's okay, nothing's wrong, because we see the new variant is in Ontario, and our caseloads are going up, and that is very concerning.
It certainly is concerning for sure. We're going to come back with our Queen's Park review. Jill Bissot, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South. You're probably just down the road from us, John. David Piccini, PC MPP for Northumberland, Peterborough South. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the third wave and the red zone. Stay with us.
It started out with a small outdoor booth, in what was called Artist Alley, which is actually the area just outside our store on William Street, where for a couple of years we sold our jewelry directly on the street. And then we slowly evolved to having an indoor location in this building, 55 Barwood Market Square. We then moved to another location in Place de Ville, and then moved back down here on Dalhousie Street at Irrigere in the 90s, and then back into this building again in 2000 as a collection. I do a collection of jewelry called Cirque that's mainly beaded work with a combination of semi-precious and vintage beads. And then she does a hat collection called Fanfreluche that's all cut and sewn hats in a variety of fabrics and for all of the seasons of the year. We've curated and sourced the artisans that we represent in a lot of different ways over the years since it's been, since 1985. Some people come to us since we're known, and other artisans that we represent might recommend that they come and see us. Some people we find at craft shows, or we see their work, somebody wears it in, and we go and track it down and bring it. And then some people, interestingly, are with us in one medium, and then sometimes they evolve to another. They're all Canadian and mainly local. With the roughly 50 people that we have, I'd say more than half of those are Ottawa-Gatineau, and then the rest are from other cities in Canada, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, etc. If you can afford it, go to a small business and spend some money. It's lovely when you come in and, give me a pep talk and tell me how much you love this place and you've been coming here for years. But if you can afford it, please spend some money too, because all the pep talks in the world are not going to pay my rent, which is still full rent even when we're closed. Then secondly, if you can't afford to spend money, follow the businesses that you want to support on social media. Go to their Instagram, go to their Facebook, follow their Twitter, and then retweet, share their Facebook page, like and comment. Because if you can't afford to, as many of us can't right now, to do extra expenditures, doing all of those little things like that will raise the visibility of those small businesses, and hopefully for them result in some online or curbside or other business for them.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And we definitely have some strong opinions today on our Queen's Park review like we do every Friday. I'm Sam Laprade, filling in for Rob Snow. Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, and of course John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South, David Piccini, PC MPP for Northumberland, Peterborough South. Let me be frank, this has been a very challenging year. There's no two ways about it. Are we doing a good enough job, David, at when we think about the different, Ottawa going into the red zone? We know so much more than we did this time last year. Is it right to lock us down right now in this way?
Yeah, so I would say what we know is that the third wave that many are talking about, I think without question, that no doubt that's here. First and foremost, the best way to have avoided that third wave was if we had more vaccine supply in the country, but there is light on the horizon with that, and we're expecting more shipments coming in the coming weeks. Having said that, I think, understanding that the realities are different across this great province of ours, and that we have the emergency break-in allowing for local health units to pivot. We've enacted a 6-point plan to limit the number of variants of concern circulating in the province, and we'll continue to work with Dr. Williams. I think without question, your comment about endless lockdowns are the answer. No, I think we must move beyond. We must, embrace rapid testing, which we are as a government, working to get those rapid tests out in supply chain, but also out into the general public, getting jabs in arms as fast as we get them, and looking at capacity limits and other measures. And, the science, without question, the science isn't linear on this. It evolves. With respect to the variants, that evolves too. And so we always have to engage, be responsive, work with our healthcare professionals, and understand that the risk profile that this poses, and act swiftly to prevent it. So I think the measures we've put in place as a government are addressing that.
John Fraser, I don't know if you're in your constituency right now or if you're at Queen's Park. Are you here in Ottawa?
I'm here, yep.
So in Ottawa here, I don't think, exactly, I think we're very close. In Ottawa here, it's palpable. You can feel the disheartened of people, of small businesses, of people in general. You can just, there's a feeling. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, no, I think people, look, there's no question there's fatigue. It's been a long year, and people have had to sacrifice being with their family, their friends, connections. But the thing is, we're getting to the end of a very long slog, and we're going to have to do what we can to protect each other, and that's following public health advice. And it does evolve. We do have to look at it, and it does change over time, and we shouldn't be surprised when that happens because we learn new things. But right now, we got to wear a mask, wash your hands, stay socially distanced, keep your bubble small. The weather's going to change soon. We'll be able to be outside more. The disease, when the sun is shining and it's warmer, it's easier for all of us. It's going to be, I think, a hard month, 2 months that we're all going to have to do the best we can to protect each other.
Gilles, is it time? Yeah, is it time for a change, Gilles Bisson?
Well, I think there was a really good comment I made by somebody in the States who says, when you get down to the end zone, you don't spike the ball in the 5-yard line, and that's what the danger is here. Is that you don't want to be in a position where we let our guard down. And even though the vaccines are increasing, you got to remember there's a very small percentage of our population that's been vaccinated, and it's going to take a while by the time we get to having the level of vaccination that is going to give us herd immunity. So to John's point and to David's point, we need to make sure that we stay vigilant. Maybe we can adjust the way that we do lockdowns. There's ways of being able to do that we've learned that may be safer, and we'll leave that to the public health officials to decide how to do that. But it means that we all have to do our part. You're looking at, people are starting to say, oh, well, I'm tired. I see it here in Timmins. People are starting to say, well, I'm tired of all of this, and I'm going to have a party, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And all of a sudden, your cases go back up again.
Yeah.
So,
let me ask you this.
We need to do our part and get to the end line and get to the end zone here.
I have a question for you, David. When this is all said and done, let's bring ourselves to 2023 or 2024, and we've gotten through this. Do you think it's important for there to be a review of what was done? Do you think it's important that we take the time to see the mistakes that were made, the things that were done right? Is that something that the Ford government is committed to doing?
Yes, and I would say both personally, professionally, I would say we absolutely need that. And I would, suggest that a couple things. One, without question, there's always going to be lessons learned through significant pandemics of this size, a global pandemic. We've got to work, our federal government, with international partners. Provincially, we've got to work with the feds and our municipalities to understand the different roles, to work at making sure we're as responsive as we can be. I, again, think locally we had emergency response plans in place, which is why we quickly stood up mass vaccination sites. That was something that worked, for example. But then there are things that didn't, and things we can constantly improve improve on. One of the things I do look to and I'm proud of is that the Ontario Together, the pivot to embrace manufacturing, I think to a local mask manufacturer here, and the support that the government's provided to not be so reliant on empty plane loads of PPE from China, but looking at being more self-reliant here, embracing our technology. So I think that was the right move, and we have to do more. And honestly, I think John, I think Gilles, and everybody has a role in that, and that's going to be critical.
And that was actually going to be my next point, John Fraser. We don't want the Ford government to be doing this review, let's say, whenever it's appropriate to do it, and it be, wow, what a fantastic job Doug Ford did, right? I think we have to really ensure everyone's at the table to have that critical eye.
Yeah, I think it has to be an independent review to look at that. I think we all have input into that. There are some things the government has done right. But in general, I look at our responses in terms of our preparedness and our readiness. There's something that needed, we needed much better there, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. And then our response, in many ways, has been flat-footed. We were 2 weeks behind other provinces in getting a first dose to everybody in long-term care. We have this habit of saying something on Thursday, we're going to tell you something on Monday that we're going to do on Saturday. That's like the lockdown before Christmas. So I think one of the things that we have to look at in this thing is the government's ability and the need to respond quickly in an emergency situation. I think, that bears some scrutiny. But as I said, the government's done some things right. And I think that you need to look at it in the whole picture. But the thing that concerns me most is what I'd say a flat-footed response, not responding as quickly as we need to.
Let's do a bit of a rapid-fire poll here. When we think about what happened at the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Peel, we know that there are 600 cases of COVID there. Very quickly, Gilles Bisson, who should be responsible for that? Is it Amazon? Is it the government?
Well, I think Amazon is the employer because you're responsible to make sure that you provide a safe workplace. So there are rules and there are laws in Ontario about how to do that. So clearly something happened, but I think the government has part of it falls on them because there is a different reality when it comes to working in those type of workplaces where you have a high number of people working in confined spaces. Maybe the rules that we had in place were not as good as they needed to be.
Very, very quickly, David, just in 20 seconds, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think without question, we've always got to keep a close eye on that. I know, the ministry's conducted, I believe, 42 plus thousand COVID-related workplace, inspections throughout this. And I know that with this specific site, there's been over 600 COVID-related inspections at warehouses writ large, 200 in February alone. And I think, we have to remain diligent in working with employers. We've had some easy-to-navigate tools on how to do that, but also I would say rapid testing and antigen testing has been an important tool to do that, and it's an important tool that everybody needs to utilize.
John Fraser, 20 seconds, your thoughts.
Employer, it's the employer. The government has a responsibility to oversee that the employer is fulfilling their obligations as to what the rules are. And right now, the government's also responsible for action. Right. And I think given that the head of the task force said that there's a vaccine supply, 10% of our weekly supply that's used for hotspots, the government has to look at taking action because the situation there is particularly acute, and all the voices coming out of that part of Ontario are saying, we need you to come here and help us because we're getting a lot of community.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Gilles Bisson, NDP MPP for Timmins, John Fraser, Liberal MPP for Ottawa South.